TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D. Wood. And with me now, I've got your friendly neighborhood historian, Raymond Ibrahim. How you doing, Raymond?
How's it going, David?
So you've caught yourself in the middle of the Nomo cult recently.
Yeah, I finally understand. I finally understand what I'm dealing with. I kind of I stepped into it rather ingenuously, thinking something else, but I'm starting to see it is in fact a cult.
It is weird, and guys, I say that because I started calling it a cult. They have all the characteristics of a cult, and a cult. Keep in mind, a cult. I mean, to be fair, like a cult is normally something that is like compromised on all the basic doctrines of something. But when I'm saying it's a cult here, it's like using cult tactics and cult methodologies to give people a cult mindset. And conspiracy theories tend to have the same effect on people, psychological effect on people, that being in a cult has. It's you've got this special knowledge and everyone else is outside of it. And they don't have this special knowledge. And well, if you present this special knowledge to people and they reject it, then it's because they're evil. They know it's true, but they're rejecting it because they're against the truth and they have ulterior motives and so on. And so, when someone usually signs on with a cult, then that's what they end up being. And it's the same with a lot of conspiracy theorists. Is we've got the special knowledge. Those other people who they either don't know or if they're familiar with it, they're evil. And that's what we're finding about ourselves right now.
Yeah, and of course there's the faith element amongst cults, and it seems that this no moery saying that Muhammad didn't exist has taken on. It's become sort of a tenet of their faith. In other words, if you attack it, you're attacking a tenet of their religion, and that's how it's become, which I didn't realize at first. And that's why they respond so irrationally and with so much vehement emotionalism, because they see it as an attack on their faith, just saying that Muhammad existed. And of course, you prove you're a horrible Christian. You're actually a Muslim. I, of course, am a Muslim. And we're all helping Islam undercover. So it's pretty bizarre stuff, which I'm only now starting to appreciate how deep this stuff goes.
And just so everyone knows, he's not exaggerating when he says it's like becoming a tenet of faith. It's like if you are not on board, you're not even a Christian, or you're an evil Christian at the very least. And we're going to be checking out some of that. Part of me wants to zoom in on you more because I have Zoom feature here, so I can zoom in on your head so that we're the same size. But I don't want to cover up.
Try to get closer.
No. I'm saying, but no, because I could do it right here. I could do it easily, but I also don't want to cover up your guns. You know what I mean? Because that's part of like the intimidation factor.
What you gonna do, brother? All right, that's a shout out to the Hulkster.
Hey, and
I used to be a Hulkamaniac at the time when Hulkamania ran wild. like '87. I was like 14 or 13, so that was the first generation of Hulkamaniacs.
You don't have to tell me that was the greatest. By the time it was, I remember it was because they had WrestleMania 1, they had WrestleMania 3 was where it really exploded, and you had Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan and
the big
stuff.
Body slam.
Yep, I was a Hulk. Well, it was weird because my favorite was Roddy Piper. my favorite was Roddy Piper.
Was funny.
But I love the way he was always trash talking and stuff. But how are we talking about? Oh, we were talking about your guns. Yeah. So notice if we wanted to argue like them, right? If we wanted to argue like them, and guys, we're going to see this. We're not exaggerating. In fact, we are understating how bad this is. Every single thing we say, it's for some ulterior motive. And I've seen that we're being paid. We're being paid by wealthy, oil-rich Muslims to defend Muhammad's existence, because if we don't defend it, then Jay Smith will completely destroy Islam with his powerful no-mo arguments. I've seen it's because I'm being paid by Israel, so Israel's paying me to defend Muhammad's existence, because if I don't know why they wouldn't want Islam wiped out by Jay Smith's powerful arguments and so on. But there's always some sinister motive.
Mine is very obvious. I'm just Ibrahim. So I was always a clandestine Muslim, and now the truth's come out. Now everyone knows what I've really been up to, which is, defending Muhammad.
Yeah. So now the truth is out. He's defending, and we hear that too. It's like we're secretly helping the Dawa guys and trying to prop up Islam, and we're trying to get Muslims who left Islam because of the powerful case of Jay Smith. We're trying to bring them back into Islam, even though I've never seen a Muslim leave because of these arguments. I've seen thousands. I've seen thousands of Muslims leaving because of the problems with Islam.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're working for all sorts of really really terrible people, and that means we're evil. But notice, if we wanted to argue like that, it'd be very easy. You know, Jay Smith is jealous of Raymond Ibrahim's big muscles, and it's giving him an inferiority complex, and so that's why he's lashing out at Raymond and so on. It's like, who would think that is like not the dumbest thing they've ever heard in their entire lives? But we could if we wanted to go in that direction. Fortunately, we
They're
won't.
desperate. That's why they do. That's why their argumentation has just devolved into such caricatures. They don't have anything else, as we're going to see.
All right. So, yeah, before we jump into, we got video clips. We've got tons of screenshots of comments from the Nomo fans. Just for anyone who's new here, why don't you give a little background into what you've spent your life doing and so on, and basically how you got into this particular topic recently.
Okay. Yeah, I've been doing this stuff for probably 20 years. My first article published, I think, around 2005, and I've just been, I studied it academically, Islam and the Middle East and the medieval era, especially history, the Arabic language, worked at the Library of Congress for many years, focusing on that field. First book came out in 2007, The Al-Qaeda Reader. Been writing books since, specifically really focused on history lately, including the most popular ones, probably Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam and the West, which gives a broad overview of the historical conflict. The truth is, this is the irony. I'm so not interested in Muhammad. Muhammad was sort of like the entrance thing. It was the fun child's play back in the early 2000s for me, learning about him. And then I decided, okay, now it's time to kind of move on and look at the actual history of Muslims century by century. And we'll get to how I got suckered into this, but I've always found that much more, I think, telling rather than always. Of course, talking about Muhammad is important, which is why you and I are doing it. But anyway, and so I continued, and that's essentially what I do now is mostly write the books, articles, and I got my little YouTube channel, which I've basically been working on this last year, and it's growing, and I'm happy about that. And yeah, so how I got into this is because I would write articles or I'd make videos, or in my books, I would still have to mention Muhammad once in a while, right? Even though I talk about usually events after his life. And it would just never fail. There would have to be someone who comes crashing in hysterically, always in all caps with exclamation marks, screaming about how I thought you were smart. I liked everything you said up until you got to Muhammad and proved how dumb you are. And then it would follow, and you haven't read what Jay Smith says, or you haven't watched Jay Smith. Everyone knows Muhammad never existed. Are you crazy? Okay, so that started happening a lot. And originally I would just ignore it. And I've always been familiar with the skepticism towards early Islam and even the claims that Muhammad never existed. And I just never bought them for various reasons. So long story short, I decided to make a video, which I cut in two parts, just to clarify to people, because a lot of these attacks that would come to me would be also polite, sort of like, you're doing really well, but we want to politely inform you that you need to learn more about how Muhammad never exists, because we saw you mention him as if he was real. Okay, so I wanted to make clear to people, yeah, I understand the arguments, and I just don't buy them. So yeah, to me, Muhammad is real, and I talk about him in that sense. And then at the same time, I explained why I believe the no-mo position is so futile, especially against Muslims. And we can get into that, but I think you already know. It's really the weakest polemic. And the reason it's the weakest polemic is because, as I explained in those videos, the questions that we're dealing with, and the reason this is such an annoying and vexatious nonstop thing, is because the question of a person's existence or non-existence 14 centuries ago will never be answered. Okay, not just Muhammad, any historical figure. We will never definitively be able to say Muhammad or anyone from 1,400 years ago, or even 1,000 years ago, or even 500-600 years ago, say that person didn't exist or that person did exist. Okay, and in order to get a Muslim to believe that, you better concretely prove it without a shadow of a doubt. But it can't be done. And I'm not saying it can't be done because Muhammad did exist or didn't exist. It's just the discipline of history. If you know how it works and the historical method, that can't be done. And I'll even give you an example. I know you believe Muhammad existed. What if I were to ask you, what hypothetical evidence would you need to finally join the no camp the no camp group. And my point is, as you think about it and give me an answer,
I can already give
is
you an
that you have an answer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's hear it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. First, I just wanted to clarify because there are people who tend to misunderstand things. When you're saying you can't prove something from 1400 years ago, what you're saying is like prove it with certainty, like this. Basically,
mathematical exact certainty.
Yeah. Yeah, so history is basically probabilistic. You're always arguing
Right.
based on probabilities and so on.
Right.
And so you're saying there's no
You
scenario
need
where
certainty, though, to get a Muslim to believe you is what I'm saying, not probability.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like whatever case you think you have,
Right.
it's never going, since you're dealing with probabilities, and it's never
Right.
going to be enough to convince a Muslim that Muhammad didn't exist, and therefore why would you go down this road? Yeah, so
Or even to convince me as a non-Muslim, because a lot of the bottom line is whatever evidence a person can show, whether it's a coin or a map or whatever, something written or not written, there is always 100 responses to it.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's why in my initial videos, I said, I don't even have to know Jay Smith's arguments to know that I can disagree with them, because I know they can't have, there's certain truths which are like mathematical truths, okay? And if you're a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or an atheist, you believe it, right? Radical Muslims and Christians all agree 2 + 2 = 1, 4. They all believe we need oxygen. They all believe we need food, okay? That's because these are concrete, incontrovertible proofs. The questions of history will never reach that certainty. You're right. Of course, there's probability, right? But without certainty, then I don't need to even know your argument, because I already know that the primary sources, which is the most important thing when you're doing history, support the existence of Muhammad. So just because someone can now delve in and look at maps and coins and make arguments, that's not any kind of proof to overthrow the primary sources, which is what someone like Jay Smith does. But if you can, so to give you an example, I was thinking to myself, what's the most powerful hypothetical proof to show that Muhammad didn't exist? And one thing that came to my mind.
I had my answer too. But go.
Okay. Yeah, well, you give me yours.
Okay. Yeah, mine was, if you ask what evidence could be giving would sway me over to that side. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not thinking of any particular evidence, but I think in terms of inference to the best explanation, like here's all the evidence, basically all the evidence that's in front of me. What is the best explanation of this evidence? And if it's not just this one slightly seems better, because I could withhold judgment on something like that. If I was like 50-50, I would say I don't believe that he existed. I don't believe he didn't exist. I'm undecided on the matter. So to say I believe something kind of has to be like, 80% or something like that. Seems like 80% probability, 90% or something like that. And I'll say, okay, I believe that. So I believe that Muhammad existed, and I would say I have a high level of confidence in that. So for me to sort of join their side, they would have to show me that they have a significantly better explanation. If they just showed they have like an equally plausible explanation for his non-existence, then I would say, okay, well, I'm undecided. I don't know. I'm agnostic on the issue. For me to actually say, no, Muhammad didn't exist, they'd have to show they have a way better case that he didn't exist than that he did. The problem is anytime they give the arguments, and then the arguments will circulate for a while, and as soon as we actually sit down and examine the argument, it turns out to be based on either a lot of speculation or a lot of questionable argumentation, or just flat out nonsense, which is like that Jesus was known as Muhammad, and so that was complete nonsense. It was completely made up, and I still have them telling me it every day. I still have the nomos telling me every single day, but you haven't refuted them, Muhammad. What are you talking about? Even Jay backed off that when it was refuted to him. So anyway, yeah, that would be. Need a better explanation that isn't based on a bunch of made up stuff as soon as we examine it.
Right. So now here. Let me give you ultimately what I'm trying to get at too is that there is no kind. I'm trying to let my mind go wild and see what kind of evidence that could possibly come up with, even though I know they don't have it. But let's say this, and this is just to show you how this sort of argumentation, there's always a response to it. So what if we found a written in Arabic parchment or book from the 8th century, and it's by some Arab king who flat out says, we created in our court a man named Muhammad, and we gave him these characteristics, and we did all this to validate ourselves. Now, I'm sure the nomos would have a field day and case is closed, but it still wouldn't be closed, because guess what? The nomos' entire premise is built on conspiracy theories. Everyone's lying, everyone's hiding, everyone's misrepresenting. So how do we know that isn't the lie? You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
It can never be concrete proof. That's why for me, this entire thing is just sort of like at best an academic exercise, especially when it's done among non-Muslims. It's just an academic exercise, as I tried to explain. So anyway, just to finalize how I got into the debate thing, and because it's really relevant to what we're going to talk about, is so I made those videos saying basically what I'm saying right now. And this is why I don't believe. This is why I do believe Muhammad exists, and I give all my reasons. And one of the most important reasons, for whoever didn't watch the debate, this is really what it comes down to, which is that historians, what they do to determine the historical veracity of a character, which happened to Jesus, by the way, is that what they do is they actually, first of all, discount the writings by their followers, okay, because they say they're biased. So for all the people who were skeptical about Jesus, they didn't want to look at Paul, they didn't want to look at the Gospels or the New Testament because they're biased. They believe in miracles. Who's going to believe these guys? So we start looking for Roman writers who mention Jesus, right? And then they find them, right? And so the same thing happened with Muhammad. So they said, well, we're not going to look at the standard Islamic narrative. We want to find what others said. And lo and behold, there's 15 contemporary sources of these are not Muslims, so this isn't part of a conspiracy. They're not late, so you can't say, oh, this is hundreds of years after Muhammad. You can't trust it, which is itself another weak argument, because almost everything we have about historical characters from the 7th century and before is hundreds of years after their existence, and we don't say they don't exist. Okay, but so we had, and I quoted some of them, 2 years after Muhammad's life, you have someone talking about an Arabian prophet who comes with swords and chariots and promises paradise to his followers. I mean, that's a description of Muhammad to a T. We have another Armenian bishop, like 20 or 30 years later, who calls him by name Muhammad, and then says he presents himself as a prophet in the line of the Old Testament, and he banned them from drinking alcohol. That's Muhammad, okay? And then, to show you you mentioned the Muhammad argument, and to show you how really bad this is, I don't know what argument you're referring to that Jay backed off, but the first thing that struck me as an Arabic speaker when I heard Muhammad means the praised one, and therefore it doesn't mean Muhammad the person. That's a later kind of attribution, but what he doesn't seem to understand is every single Arabic name means something laudatory, honorific, like praised one. Ahmed means the same thing. Kareem is the generous one. Azim, the mighty one. Any name that you can think of, Rashid, the swift one, they all mean something. And if you want to twist it, you can probably say they're appellations for Jesus Christ if you want. And then the other flip side of this argument, because it seems like Jay vacillates on Muhammad's name. On the one hand, he claims this, the Muhammad is the praised one to Jesus. But when you look at the writings in that I'm referring to, the contemporary non-Muslim writings in Greek, what Jay and so many others are apparently getting tripped over is how the Greeks transliterate Muhammad's name. Okay, and as you know, transliterate means you're trying to approximate and capture the sounds of a foreign language with your own alphabet. Okay, and as it happens in Greek, there is no H letter, so you cannot write Muhammad. Okay, so how would you write it? You would write Mamet. And that's exactly what they write. But others don't write that. Others put a chi because they're trying to approximate the H sound. So anyway, for Jay and others, this is proof that's not the same guy, because that's not how you spell Muhammad. And yet, in this right now, today, how many ways have you seen in English Muhammad spelled? There's countless ways.
At least half a dozen that are pretty regular. So you got Muhammad with a U, Muhammad with a O, and Muhammad and at the end it's an A, or at the end it's an E before the D. And then if you go back a century, it was very common to see Muhammad with a T on the end. And different spellings of that.
Right. And one of Jay's big arguments is, because sometimes in the Greek they put a T, not a D. Well, so my point, this is a transliteration. This is some guy writing in Greek in the 7th century trying to sound out this funny name and spelling it with Greek letters. This is absolutely nothing to get tripped up on. And so Jay always acts like, and the translators, they change it to Muhammad. Well, of course they do that. I'm a translator. That's exactly what you would do, because that's what they're saying. I'm not going to get caught up on the transliteration. We all know what they're talking about. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that, because I think so those are the key points. And then anyway, soon thereafter, Jay started challenging me to a debate. Okay. And at first he misrepresented everything I said. He made a video just putting all kinds of words in my mouth that I didn't even say. Yeah, all sorts of positions I never said. And then And then I called him out on it, and then he's like, "No, let's have a debate. Let's have a debate." So what does he want to debate me with? Well, I only made those 2 videos, and my 2 videos were about proving that Muhammad existed through the early non-Muslim sources and the name thing, right? But then when we had the debate, all of a sudden, and I brought all those points up, he started saying, "Oh, that's not what I thought we were going to talk about." Okay. So anyway, that's how I've been dragged into this. And I actually entered it in good faith because a lot of people were getting upset with what I'm saying. And I wanted to clarify and say, look, this is why I don't believe it. And there's so many other sort of important philosophical points I've been trying to make to a lot of these nomos, primarily that it really doesn't matter. This argument of nomo only has importance and validity when it's applied to Muslims, because then it's a polemic. And yes, theoretically, it could make a Muslim doubt and leave Islam. You and I think we both agree it's very weak, but that is what it's designed for. It's a polemic, okay? But that's not what I'm seeing, and I don't think that's what you're seeing. What we're seeing is it's being weaponized against other non-Muslims and Christians.
Yeah, and causing division.
And in this case, and what do we gain? And it's like if I were to convert, what is it, like 5 billion non-Muslims in the world? If every one of them became a no-mower, what happens? Islam's going to die? Nothing will change. Nothing changes in our mind. Think about it. You and I believe Muhammad existed, but he was a false prophet. What does that mean? It means Muslims are misguided by a lie. Jay believes Muhammad never existed. What does that mean? It means Muslims are misguided by a lie. One is a fake prophet, one is a make-believe prophet. Nothing really changes in our minds, and yet it's being pushed on us non-Muslims like it's so important, and it's a cardinal of faith, and we have to accept it. Anyway, I've rambled on, so I'll let you take it over.
Yeah, I just wanted to, 2 things. I just wanted everyone to know we have a lot of Zoot fans in the chat. This has become I don't know if you've seen it as much as I have, but everyone's bringing up Zoot everywhere.
I am the Zoot man. I popularized the Zoot.
That's what I wanted to point out. See, I'd heard it for years, but it was always from basically the Arabic channels. And I'd hear people who follow them and they're like, "Hey, do you know this?" and so on. Anyway, I'll hear something for years and I'm always waiting, like, what's the right time? What's the right time? When it gets to the right time, somehow I'll just know it's the right time. And then I'll jump on an issue and start spreading it around. And it was your video. You came out with the Zoot video, and I was like, "Oh, here's a clear one. It's available in English. All right, here's the right time." So then I took clips of that, made a video out of it, and now Al Zoot is everywhere.
But the irony is, I made that video specifically in response to the nomos, because the whole point was to show. Because their argument when we say the embarrassing hadith, like what's the logic? Why would Muhammad's life, if he's a made up supposedly hagiographical prophet who people should be looking up to, why is his entire biography full of embarrassing, shameful things? And the nomo response is so weak, and it's pretty weak. It's insulting to one's intelligence. It's basically you and I are anachronizing, and we don't understand that everything that we think is embarrassing was just so cool to the 7th century Arabs. And it's kind of like, no, actually a lot of the stuff that we find embarrassing was even worse for them. Okay. So for example, how do you think 7th century Arabs, ultra uber patriarchal, all about tribal honor and manhood, think it's cool that their prophet goes out in the desert and gets ridden by a bunch of tall, naked Zut all night long? You think that's a cool thing for them? Even Ibn Kathir pointed out this is a very odd and strange hadith. It was embarrassing from day one. Okay, and there's a lot of that sort of thing. So when they argue that, oh no, we just don't get it, that was all so cool back then, that is such a weak argument that's really kind of insulting to one's intelligence.
Yeah, we're gonna see a clip of Jay and Robert responding, and to be fair, they are correct in that beliefs today do not necessarily and very frequently don't match beliefs 14 centuries ago. Yeah, so things that are embarrassing to us aren't necessarily embarrassing but there are things that we know were embarrassing even back then. And I want to say a lot of it is a lot of the speculations that come up are well, maybe there was a reason that this was acceptable, but we just don't know. And that's always possible. Like, guess what? It's because you're talking about history being probabilistic. It's possible that there was some reason this was thought of as a really cool thing to do, and we just don't know it. But you'd have to think, okay, what are the odds of that? Seems pretty slim. But guess what? So if you had to do that for one thing, that would be one issue. But when you need to do that for like 10,000 different stories in the Muslim sources, you'd say maybe it was because of this. Maybe this ruler wanted it because of this. Maybe they thought semen all over his clothes was cool because of this. Maybe they thought the satanic verses were awesome because of this. Now, you have to get the probability of your basically giant conspiracy here, you need to multiply all those. And so if it's like 1% times 0.5% times 10% times 2% and stuff, you get this massively improbable hypothesis. And that's what we're supposed to go.
And why complicate it so much? Why not just be able to read between the lines and say, these were people who were slavishly just writing down and memorizing anything they could. And, guess what? A lot of, as you would expect, a lot of warts came through because this man was a pretty fallible human being. And there it is on open display. And if anything, it's great proof for his existence.
Yeah, and there is an element of Occam's razor here. Like, hey, what's the simplest explanation? It's that there's a guy who did all this messed up stuff, or a lot of it, and his followers recorded some of it, versus, maybe there was a ruler that we don't know about who thought getting banged out in the desert was really cool. And maybe there's this other guy who thought it was really cool being covered in semen. And maybe, and all of a sudden now you've got like 5,000 hypothetical dudes all teaching this weird, creepy stuff. And you don't know that any of these guys exist, and you're just, well, maybe. Okay, guys, you can do that with anyone. You could do that with anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what they don't get. What they do is they jettison the most approved and trusted standards of historical criteria, primary sources, and they just poo-poo them away. Oh yeah, because they get in the way of our agenda. All these 7th century, John of Damascus, give me a break. This guy living, just 40, 50, 60 years after Muhammad, talking about Muhammad, writing about Muhammad, mentioning Quran surahs. But hey, he didn't get it all right. Therefore, he was. I mean, the arguments they make are really asinine. Of course, he didn't get it right. The guy who says he was perfect, the guy's working in horrible conditions. He doesn't have the internet to find out what the Quran says online. You expect mistakes in the writings, but everything he writes, and Theodore Abu Qura writes Muhammad the same way John of Damascus does in Greek, and then in Arabic he writes it the exact way, Muhammad. It's so to me. To argue against this is now you've left the realm of just objective thinking, and you have an agenda, and you need to take these out. And then, as we're pointing out, then they do the exact opposite. And then they find the most extreme hypothesis, and if it works for them, then they treat it like this is the unassailable, concrete, omniscient proof that knows everything and cannot be doubted. I mean, their methodology is really, really sloppy, and by historical standards, kind of a joke, to be honest with you.
And it is, and part of the issue is that Jay will take something that's complete speculation or just complete fabrication or something like that, but he'll say it with the same confidence as he's saying something that is really strong evidence and so on. He has the same level of confidence no matter what he's saying. But you were asking about the Mahmud issue. This is kind of. I wasn't involved in this discussion. Mary and Thaddeus came out with a Coins video, a response to Jay Smith, and I was interested because I never looked into it too much, so I wanted to go through that and stuff. But before we actually got to that, I've always held the position, hey, if you guys want to make your argument that Muhammad didn't exist, awesome, because if you convince someone with that, cool. I'll argue what I think. You argue that. And we'll see how things work out.
They're not arguing against Muslims; they're arguing against us.
That's what I mean. And as you pointed, they're coming at us. They're demanding this cult-like allegiance. Everyone has to be on the same page, or you're evil, and you must have some ulterior motive. But even like Jay's been saying, he said a long time ago that the only reason I'm not on board with the Nomo crowd is because there's too much money in it for me if I'm right, and Muhammad is this really, really bad dude. So he was saying that years ago, and so I never said one word. Guys, go ahead and find me saying anything about it. Never said anything in response. If you want to argue like that, fine. Just go ahead. But it's more recently when other people started responding, Giant DOC and Marion Thaddeus started responding to some of his claims that some of it's like extremely problematic, just flat out made up. And then it was they're just responding because they're jealous of him, and they're just responding because of this or that. And it was the same exact thing, But now it wasn't about me. Say it about me all day long. Now it was about my friends. And he's just there. And what's crazy is they were completely right. And he eventually had to back off the argument and say he's going to stop using it and so on. But they were correct. But so people are correcting him on bad arguments or on mistakes. And he's still responding as if they're just in it for something else, when eventually he's agreeing with them on some of the issues. And so this is just really weird stuff. But go ahead and say what you wanted to say, and then we'll watch the little clip so you can see what we're talking about.
Well, I was just thinking of all the accusations that they're making against us, and one of them that I heard and I've seen, and I wanted to just dispel very quickly, is the one that like people like you and I are worried that if Muhammad is taken away, we're going to lose our bread and butter because our job is to attack Muhammad. Okay, and here's now the other part of this cult: the egoism, the egotistical attitude. Because we believe Muhammad doesn't exist, ergo 2 billion Muslims also believe it. The fact is,
their confidence is based on us. Their confidence is based on us. And if we switch, then all the confidence of Muslims in the existence of Muhammad would collapse and Islam would collapse. And we're like, no, don't let Islam collapse.
Don't let that happen.
What are we going to do with our lives? What would we ever find to do?
And they don't seem to understand that. Meanwhile, 2 billion Muslims believe Muhammad existed. So I think, we have good job security if that's the issue, because what you guys are saying is totally ineffective. So we're not even bringing it up because we're afraid Muslims are going to leave Islam and we don't have something to do. They're there. You are ineffective. And it just, again, shows you how they're not even thinking clearly when they make these kind of silly accusations and arguments.
Yeah, and I pointed out in a recent live stream when this came up, because you're getting blasted with this. I'm getting blasted with the same accusation. Not the way Muhammad was getting blasted by Al-Zut, but everyone knows what we're talking about. But yeah, people are, and I responded, like even the Dawa guys stopped responding with this years ago. And it's just because, I mean, we've been getting threatened with brutal murder for all these years. I had to point out that, when my friend Nabil and I, when we decided we were going to go after Islam, we actually concluded that we were probably signing our death certificates because there weren't a lot of people doing it back then. And if there's only a couple people doing it, and we're going around actually speaking on it and stuff, and we're actually like going to the Dearborn Arab Festival and stuff like this. And people are saying if we show up, they're going to kill us. If we show up here, they're going to kill us. If we show up there, they're going to kill us. Well, you obviously think most of these people are just running their mouths, but there are probably a couple serious people in there, and we wouldn't be exactly hard to kill if we're going around speaking and so on. So we actually thought when we were deciding to do this that we were dead, and we're willing to do it. Nabil, when he was about to propose marriage to his wife, had to say, there's a really good chance I'm going to be killed. I had to, it was actually my wife, but when our kids turned 4 and 6, we're getting all sorts of death threats, and I'd be traveling sometimes, and she had to actually sit my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old sons down and say, guys, if someone ever comes through the door and you hear a big commotion and someone is hurting me and you hear me screaming, I do not want you to come help me. I want you to run and hide. And even if you hear me screaming, do not come and help me. I want you to hide, and just know that I'm more worried about you guys than I am about myself. And so she had to actually have this discussion with my kids and so on. But again, even the Dawa guys, because when we started this, you guys are just criticizing Islam because of all the money you'll make. Not like, it destroys, destroys your life in a lot of ways. Everyone attacked you. Everyone attacked you back then because Muslims would attack you and they'd say, you're an evil person. We're going to kill you, and we're going to do this to your wife. We're going to do this to your mom. We're going to do this to your kids and stuff. Atheists would attack you. They'd say, but you're religious too. How can you complain about another religion when your religion is just as dumb, hypocrite? And they'd be blasting you. But back then, Christians would attack you as well. They'd say it's not loving to be attacking Muhammad and the Quran. You're going to hurt their feelings and so on. So shame on you. You just got blasted from every direction. But back then, the Dawa guys were saying, yes, they're just doing this because there's so many benefits to it all. So much money involved. But even they gave that up over many years because it was just obvious. If a guy says he's going to kill me in Times Square and I show up to Times Square with the camera rolling, giving him the opportunity, it just becomes obvious to people you must really believe what you're doing because you're repeatedly ready to lay down your life for this stuff. And it's the same thing I would say about Jay Smith. If someone said the reason Jay Smith's doing all this is for money or something, I would say that guy was on the ladder at Speaker's Corner surrounded by Muslims for decades. There's no way he's doing it for some ulterior motive, because he's putting his life on the line regularly over and over again. So it wouldn't even make sense. So anyway, the Dawa guys even gave that up. Now the only place I hear this from is the Nomos. They're the ones I hear it from all the time. You guys are just doing this. The only reason you're defending Muhammad is because you're getting paid by Saudi Arabia or Qatar or something like this. You're getting paid by Israel. There's just too much money involved for you. And this is
how's it defending Muhammad to say he exists, but he was a despicable human being? they don't seem to get that. 14 centuries of Christians who stuck their neck out to the sword and were martyred all believed Muhammad existed, but they believed he was a false prophet. I don't get this incongruity where if you believe in this man's existence, you are now somehow. And I think we're going to see, people making those exact comments. Just because you believe he existed, you're on his side. You're a helper of Islam. I mean, and the thing is, I, like you, for 20 years, I've had my enemies, and they would be Muslims and leftists. At this point, nobody is worse than the Nomos. They are the most vocal, the most hostile, the most acrimonious in their attacks. And it's just kind of like, and again, it's because they're a cult. Their mind is cultic, and when we say what we say, which is Muhammad existed, it just is such a challenge to their faith that we become these horrible, atheists and Satanists and definitely non-Christians.
Yeah, and that's all tied to it. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Muhammad, when he's in Mecca, he's telling the Meccans, he's surrounded by polytheists, but he's telling them, yeah, I'm in the books of the Jews and Christians. And when they see me, they'll confirm me, because they know me, man. They'll know me as soon as I see me, because I'm in their scriptures, and they know it. They've got my complete description in their scriptures. And so when I run into some Jews or Christians, you guys are going to see, these guys be like, this is the prophet we've all been waiting for. Well, he tells his followers that for years, and then they actually go to Medina, and the Jews are like, what, are you kidding me? You think you're in our scriptures? Well, you're a joke, dude. And what becomes the response then? Oh, they know I'm in their scriptures, but they're lying, right? So people wonder, why do you have the end will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews, and the Jews are hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees are saying, hey, there's a Jew coming, there's a Jew behind me, come kill him. Why are they calling for complete extermination of the Jews? Because it's not a difference of opinion. It's not, they don't sincerely reject Muhammad. They know he's a true prophet, and they're against him anyway, which means they're against God. They're against the truth. They're on the side of complete evil, and they're trying to cover up the truth. And it's, well, these guys are just pure evil. They have to die. Well, there's a parallel with us. If you just say, hey, we're looking at the same evidence, but people are different. People are different. Some people have a lot of confidence in the principle of embarrassment. Other people, not so much. Well, guess what? You're going to come to different conclusions based on the evidence, based on these kinds of things. We're all individuals. We have different ways of thinking. We have different amounts and kinds of evidence in front of us. And so we're going to come to different conclusions. Instead of that, it's, oh, these guys know that Muhammad didn't exist, but they're covering it up, and they're working for Saudi Arabia, and they're working for Israel, and they're trying to cover up the truth, and they're trying to keep Muslims in Islam instead of getting them all out of Islam. And so we're on the side of evil. We're sick, evil. Yeah, we're sick, evil people serving the forces of Satan by saying that Muhammad exists. And what I say Muhammad existed, and he's the most obvious false prophet in history. But that's what they're paying us to say.
Yeah, so that's the situation. A tenet of their faith. And by the way, before we leave the Muhammad praised one topic, and just to show you, how I register the arguments.
We're about to watch a clip on that, but go ahead.
How I register the arguments that Jay Smith makes, and to me, they sound like the Muslim polemics. So when I hear Jay Smith saying, Muhammad, this is really a title and a name of Jesus Christ, you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of Muslims saying, oh, Muhammad is prophesied in the New Testament. He's the paraclete. Mm-hmm. You've heard that. How absurd is that? Insane. And that's exactly how absurd it is to tell a Muslim, oh, Muhammad means Jesus. Okay, it's just, it's the same silly kind of argumentations that they're borrowing from each other.
Yeah, so this clip was actually a preview of a response when we had Jai and DOC, because Jai and DOC, and here's what's amazing. When Jay responds to people, it's, they're just doing it because they're jealous because I'm finally getting attention, and they have to shut this down because their careers depend on attacking Muhammad.
Everyone's trying to shut him down. That's his line.
Yeah, everyone's trying to shut him down and stop him and so on. And they're just jealous because it's catching on and so on. I've heard I've been involved behind the scenes when people are going, should we respond to that? We don't want to cause division, man, and we don't want to hurt Jay's reputation, but we don't know what to do. He's telling people this horrible information, and it's going to blow up in their faces. They're going to go out and share this, and it might even catch on, and you might end up with millions of Christians sharing the same argument when all it takes is a 1-minute search to find out it's completely wrong. And this is going to be, they're saying this is going to be like our holes in the narrative when, the argument from perfect preservation of the Quran came crashing to the ground. Why? Because it was based on a lie. Well, guess what? If you convince a bunch of people to use something as evidence, and it's very easy to refute, it's a matter of time before enough people pay attention. They just crush it. And do we want that to happen? Do we want that to happen to tons of Christians, or do we actually want to try and like show that it's wrong right now? But so that's what's going on behind the scenes. Is we don't want to cause division. We don't want to discredit Jay. But what he's saying is factually false right here. What do we do? And it's like a struggle for them to decide: do we actually call this out? Well, anyway, Jai and DOC decided to call it out. And they're very gentle. They're like, "Hey, Jay's done great work. Jay's done awesome stuff, but he's just wrong on this. He's getting some bad information from some people." And Jay's response was interesting. But anyway, that's the background of this clip. And then to preview our discussion after Jay responded, they put together this little clip just to show what was kind of coming up. But here it is.
In some ways, this is what we call peer review. I'm not saying that Kai and Daughter of Christ are peers and that they're at the same level that we have, because we've been working on this for many years.
Previously on our channel.
What does Muhammad mean in Arabic? It is not a name, it is a title. It means the praised one, the blessed one, the anointed one, or even the Messiah.
Okay, guys.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
It does not. There's no one in the world, no one is going to tell you that it means the Messiah or the anointed one or even the blessed one.
So to clarify, Mahmed doesn't mean blessed one or anointed one. I did try to make that clear to Jay that Oleg meant linked by a soul.
So this is Mel's response. So Mel is the source of a lot of information that Jay just goes out and would kind of regurgitate. And here Mel, in response to Jai and DOC kind of calling out Jay for saying that this is what Mahmad means, Mel just, oh, no, of course, no, it's not what I meant. And no one's even talking about you, Mel. They're talking about Jay. But then Mel takes it as a personal attack against him, even though literally no one's talking about him. But here's him responding.
What does Muhammad mean in Arabic? It means the praised one, the blessed
Mel
one.
just said, no, that's not what he was saying.
The anointed one. St. Ambrose, writing in Syriac, talks about this Muhammad from Song of Solomon 560, and he says this is a title for Jesus Christ, the anointed one.
No, he doesn't.
Messiah. That's what the anointed one is. From that time on, from the 4th century AD, it was this Muhammad was employed by many of the church fathers.
It was employed by 0 church fathers, Jay.
Examples.
He said many. Guess what? No one on that list uses Muhammad as a title for Jesus. No one. That's kind of the point. He's saying, look, all these people, and guess what? The audience, oh my goodness, so much evidence. Wow, it's all right there. Notice he's not giving you a quote from anyone showing that anyone uses this. He's just saying all these people say it. And people walk away, wow, this is good information. And then they come use it on me. And then that's kind of the point. It's Jay was spreading this to tons of people. It's completely false. It's not there. People are coming at me with this every single day. They're coming at Jai and DOC. They're coming at everyone. Oh, Mahmad, that was just a name. That was the name for Jesus. That's where all this comes from. And then you look up the sources, doesn't say it anywhere, and then they have to backtrack on it. So check this out.
So the arguments are no church.
This is Mel's response to it being pointed out that no one used this.
Fathers ever use Mahmed as a prophetic title or name. And I would argue this is a straw man argument. That isn't what we claimed.
This Muhammad was employed by many of the church fathers. Here's some examples. Oregon. So it's not a name. It's not a name, folk. It's a title.
I'm quite happy to back away from that and say, no, I shouldn't have said title. I should have probably just used the word adjective or noun or term or something.
Not even used as that.
Like that. And
Watch what he says here, though, guys. Listen to this.
subsequently employed by St. Ambrose in the 4th century as a title for Jesus Christ.
Wasn't.
The Jews also referred to it in their reference. And
No,
what was
they didn't.
interesting, by the 7th century, the Jews started using that title for their exilarchs. The
No, they didn't.
exilarchs were those who were in charge of the seminary in what is today Baghdad. Arabic. So they have all been speaking Arabic, and they had always put Mahmud before their name.
Guys,
Did they?
Put Mahmud before their name. Mahmud ben Huziel. Mahmud ben David.
there's no Mahmed ben Oziel. There's no Mahmed ben David. What else?
Mahmud ben everyone. They have
Mahmed ben everyone. Guys, there's no Mahmed ben anything
Anyone.
in any Jewish
There's
source
none.
relating to what he's talking about.
Wow.
You mentioned Jews in Baghdad using Mahmed as a title of endearment, specifically Mahmed bin Uziel and Mahmed bin Joseph. I've checked digitized Hebrew libraries in Hebrew and have not found any matches for those exact phrases. There are no rabbinic usages of the word Mahmed in the way you described. So my short answer is, I haven't ever claimed that we had evidence for that.
I've never claimed that we had evidence for that. Jay states it as fact, and when challenged on it, it's I've never claimed that there's any evidence for that.
I think what they're referring to, and this is something that I have said in the past, you have said in the past, about a year to 2 years ago, we did say, and I remember even...
You hear this? So Jay knows that he's on record saying this, and so he says, yeah, in the past, 1 to 2 years ago, but we've since backed off this when they're actually responding to his video from last month. It was his video last month that he was saying this, and he's saying, I backed off. Yeah, we realized there was no evidence for that, so we backed off it 1 to 2 years ago. This is
Can I ask you a quick question?
This is called gaslighting, by the way. You just said that last month. No, I didn't. That was years ago. No, it was last month. No, it was years ago. Anyway, what's that?
So my question now is, I didn't even know all this about what he was saying. And seeing that it's completely made up. Okay, what is going on? Is he just a liar, or is he just the sloppiest researcher? I mean, it has to be one or the other. We can't just let it pass like that. What are we dealing with here? If he's making these powerful, supposedly arguments that he just pulls out of thin air and then says, they're based on this document and this and that, and then we find out they don't even exist. What's going on? Is he literally just creating things out of thin air, or is his research methodology just that pathetic? There has to be one or the other.
Yeah, that we backed off that 1 to 2 years ago. That has to be gaslight, because that's him saying it. That's him saying it in this response video. Oh yeah, we said that in the past, but we backed off to that, a year or two ago, and it's literally from his video, in July. That seems like gaslighting. You want to try and think the best. As far as him using this argument, it seems like people were just feeding him bad information, and he's just going with whatever. Like people, hey, here's a great argument.
Needs to verify it himself.
That's what I mean. So everyone who's watching, the most charitable interpretation here is Jay is extremely sloppy, and basically anyone who hands him an argument against the existence of Muhammad, he'll run with it, even if there's nothing. And the problem is, he will state it with complete 100% certainty that this is known factual information and then give it to the audience, and then the audience runs out. Everyone knows this is true, and it's not. It's completely made up. So notice if you have someone who's really, really sloppy and they'll believe anything someone, by the way, it reminds me of Muhammad being called the ear. But if you have people being fed information and they don't vet it and they go out and say it to their audience, and that, you need to look up everything that person says, because if a person will say 2 + 2 = 4 with the same confidence that they say Mahmud was used as a title by all these church fathers for Jesus, and he'll say that with the exact same confidence level, then their confidence tells you nothing about whether their information is accurate or not. You need to look into the stuff for yourself.
Like you said, the most charitable interpretation based on what we just evaluated is that he is just a sloppy researcher.
Yep, that's the charitable one. All right, there's a little bit left.
We did a video together where we thought that there were 5 exilarchs who had Mahmud before their name, and that these all 5 were in the 7th century. And we now no longer are saying that because that was something that we had assumed back then. But then now that we've looked at the sources more carefully, we're now pulling back on that. The reference to Mahmed ben Husiel or Nehemiah ben Husiel or Mahmed ben David, we don't see any sources for that. We don't
Right.
see any
Because
reference
there are
for
none.
that. We're now pulling back on that.
If it is true,
Imagine pulling back after you realize there's no evidence for what you're saying, and not saying it to begin with because there's no evidence for it. It would just be made up nonsense. So
Any
a little
reference
bit more
for
of
that. We're now pulling back on that.
if it is true that they'd backtracked on that claim, how is it that it was put out only a month ago to 1.3 million people?
Put Mahmed before their name. Mahmed ben Huziel. Mahmed ben David.
I'm not saying that Kai and daughter of Christ are peers in that they're at the same level that we have because we've been working on this for many years.
Okay, you've been working on it many years, and they instantly, I think Jai said it took them like a minute to look this stuff up. Yeah, so they're not peers, but anyway, the research that you've been doing for years and discovered all this stuff and have been telling to millions of people was completely wrong as soon as someone looked it up. That should tell you something. So as far as the Mahmud and Song of Solomon, what Jay was talking about right there is backing off the claim that the Jews use this as a title, Mahmud bin Uziel and so on. The other part that once we looked into this was Giant DOC, of course, but then we looked into it in a live stream. But it was that Mahmud. So the claim here is in Song of Solomon. In Song of Solomon 5:16, there's a word used for lovely. She's calling the beloved lovely, and uses the word Mahmadim, which is the plural of Mahmud. Muslims use this as an argument that Muhammad's in the Bible. Terrible argument. But here's
no worse than Jay's, right?
Yeah, I agree. But anyway, so the argument is, well, as far as Jay was saying was, all these church fathers are using Mahmud as this title for Jesus. And it just became super common. And that's the theory about how you ended up with references to Mahmud back then. And that's the origin of Muhammad, right? That's the real origin of Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And so all these church fathers talking about it just became a standard title for Jesus. Problem is, not one of them ever said it anywhere. It doesn't exist. And when you asked, when it was put to Mel to defend this, the claim is actually, well, there were church fathers who said that Song of Solomon is figurative, it's allegorical, it's about Jesus' love for the church. And okay, that part is true. There were church fathers who interpreted Song of Solomon allegorically as not between Solomon and his bride, but between Jesus and the church. But everything beyond that is just completely made up. That therefore they went to this one verse, 5:16, and then they, instead of reading it in Greek and Hebrew, which is what church fathers would have been reading it in, they instead said, we need to go to the Hebrew here. And then they see that the Hebrew word is Mahmadim, and then they went with Mahmud, and they said, we'll make a title out of this. And then it spreads all over the place, even though we have no record of this ever happening. And then this becomes so prominent that people eventually think that it's a different figure, a guy named Muhammad. And it's like, it's all made up. Apart from, there were church fathers who thought Song of Solomon is about Jesus. Everything else is made up. And yet, Raymond, when we reject that powerful argument, we're evil and we're working for wealthy Arabs.
And just, again, to show you the violence that he does to history, this Mohammed. Okay, so as you pointed out, because now Mahmed means the praised one, all these guys are now named Mahmed. So the guys that I was referring to in the 7th century that, Greek sources refer to and call Muhammad or Mohammed or whatever, these, I've heard Jay say, were actually Christians. So the ones that are actually recorded as coming and killing Christians in Syria and in Jerusalem by Thomas the Presbyter, etc., Jay has said that was a Christian guy who was being called the praised one in honor of Jesus. So look at the sort of violence and how he just completely distorts history from what it was, which is, it's Muhammad, okay, and here he is engaged in violence, killing Christians, and now we have a long continuum of the same behavior till today. Makes perfect sense, but in order to Jay to prove his point, no, that was a Christian guy coming and killing Christians, and now everything that's been happening since is all just, nobody understands how it came about. It's just all conspiracy. Everything is a lie except J. Smith's highly conjectural ideas that are just so ephemeral and tenuous. That is always what we have to believe. And if we go against that, we're sinners. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's a situation where going back to what I was saying earlier, like what would it take for me to sway? What would it take to sway me in the no-mo direction? And I said you got to come up with a better explanation for the evidence. I acknowledge there are all sorts of problems with the Muslim sources on how late a lot of them are and how much they were fabricating and inventing stories and so on. I can recognize all of that. For me to say non-existent, you would have to have a better explanation for all this came up. But when they offer an explanation for how you get to Muhammad, it's all made up nonsense. It's all just completely made up. And it's like, how is that going to be a better explanation when it's all, as soon as we examine it, it's made up?
And that's the concrete one. And another argument, that I made that, again, just to show you how unsatisfactory and how, not thought out their arguments are, is I pointed to the Sunni-Shia divide as one example, okay? The Sunni-Shia divide is not a political split in its origins. It's about succession. It's about Muhammad's bloodline, his DNA, okay? So who are they? Well, it's through his daughter, Fatima, married to Ali, his cousin, and it's Hassan and Hussein. And their progeny, the imams, are supposed to be the leaders of the Muslim world. Now, if Muhammad didn't exist, how does this come about? How did this happen? You have to have two co-conspirators. One calls himself Sunni, one calls himself Shia, who teach their children to fight and kill each other over a myth. That's what it means. And I also pointed out, and just to show you again, if you're going to make this up, right, why would you trace your bloodline through a woman? Arabs are a very highly patriarchal culture. Okay, if you're going to trace your bloodline, you're going to make up a man, a son of Muhammad. The fact that it's a woman actually gives it more credence, makes it more realistic. It's not unsimilar to the argument Christian apologists make, which is one of the reasons that the Gospels are authentic is the testimony of women, Mary Magdalene and the others. Is why would they make that up? Why would you attribute it to women? Because again, women in that time and in that age, their testimony is worthless compared to man. So why would you do it unless it's true? So it's the same thing with the Fatima line, the bloodline. You have the Fatimids, an entire empire that was early, and it's built on being descended on the daughter of Muhammad. And Jay's response to this is, oh yeah, this is some political division by the Ottomans who are centuries later, and it's cast back to the past. And yet we know that in the past, we have early records of Shias and Sunnis killing each other because of the succession and Muhammad's bloodline. And it's even mentioned in early Christian sources. It's referred to in the Maronite Chronicle, talking about Ali and rebellions. And so here again is history. And once again, Jay just completely poo-poos it and just ignores it. And then he introduces instead, hypothesis and conjecture after conjecture. And that's what we have to run with. And it's the more I think about it, the more it's just mind boggling.
Yeah. Like way back in the day, they'd actually be given some of their arguments. The nomos would be given some arguments. I'm like, that is an interesting point and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's like over time, it's too much, man. It's way too much to just accept. So we want to check out some video clips. We're going to check out some video clips of some things Jay said after your debate. I was planning on, because I didn't know how long you wanted to stay, I was planning on doing super chats after you took off, but I realized some of these are from you. So I think I'm going to take a couple at a time here and there in between various clips. And basically everyone who's sending super chats, if it's like directed just towards me or it's something general, I'm probably going to just be very quick with it. And if it's directed towards Raymond Ibrahim, then we can focus a little more on those. But anyway, will this be a 6-hour stream as well? No, unless something really weird happens. Is Robert the cult leader? No. Interesting. Robert doesn't have the cult tendency. So Robert is not responsible for the kind of cult antics. Robert isn't the one going around saying if you disagree with him, then it's because of money or things like that. So Robert, I have no problem with people running the argument. See where it goes. It's when it turns into a constant distraction, you can't even have a discussion about Muhammad without these guys coming in and starting harassing you and stuff like that.
That's why I differentiate. I always say, my beef is with the radical nomos. The moderate nomos, if it's your belief and you're fine with it and you're willing to live and let live the way I am, that's fine by me. But it's these guys who are just literally the radical
Momo extremists.
Yes.
The Momoists, yeah.
The terrorists.
Yeah, the terrorist among the momos, the intellectual terrorist. Hey, D1 and Raymond Ibrahim, can you guys point me to a book or something that explains the names of the Quran chapters and how their divisions work? Same for the Hadith as possible. Yeah, as far as the Quran, I would just say get the study Quran. They have nice little introductions that explain the names and so on. You have anything for?
No.
Okay. Yeah, grab the study Quran and that'll get you pretty far. Some cults make people crazy, others make people crazy for the zut. Hey Raymond, I don't know. I just posted a video recently where I found something very interesting. It was a sort of part 2 of the Al Zut video, but it was Mike Jones, who has his channel Inspiring Philosophy. And he was I was telling him the story of Al Zut, and he goes, that kind of reminds me of some stuff I read about this weird practice in certain places of the ancient world. But there was a practice in certain places in the ancient world where it was made for adolescents, where they believed that grown men inseminating boys made them stronger men. And so they had this weird practice where it was viewed like the more semen you put in someone, the more it was going to grow you into a strong man. And I was like, oh. Well, if Muhammad's a caravan trader, if he actually heard about that from somewhere, he could have thought, well, I'll be the most powerful man who ever lived. I will have all the men of Al Zut come and inject me with all their manliness. And I thought that would give a new meaning to that saying. He had the strength of 30 men, right? So it could actually be a number. He got banged by 30 dudes, and that's why he's so virile. Anyway.
But don't forget, that was written because that was considered a cool macho thing back in the 7th century.
Yeah. Back in the day, they thought getting banged in the desert.
His followers just thought that was just awesome.
Al Zut attacked Momo before the Quran proved him wrong. Islam is a cult. Truth is not required. I mean, Shaitan did it. Start by the cave choking verses. Oh yeah, that would be weird. If the choking Muhammad in the cave was actually some weird sexual thing. You guys talking about Muhammad? He was just here today. Why is my Amazon delivery driver so important to you guys? That's the main question. I'll take one more and then jump into some videos. I really don't understand why Jay is so adamant about the non-existence of Muhammad. He goes so far as to making verifiably false claims about the Arabic. Yeah, this apostate of Allah. She's an ex-Muslim, but yeah, that's kind of the issue. That would be the thing if you just said, "Hey, here's my theory," and go with it if you want. But it's so clear and obvious that anyone who rejects it must be something wrong with them. Anyway, let's check out some of these some video clips here, and then we'll periodically look at a couple of super chats. But which video clip do you want to take a look at? Do you want to go for his little prayer that he offered?
Yeah, that one I definitely want to comment on.
All right, so this is Jay Smith, and this is his lecture on this issue. This is after his debate with you, right?
No, this was actually, I made my 2 little videos, and then he made this long lecture in which he says he's going to respond to me, but of course it was all straw man stuff, and then he ended it with this.
Okay, here we go.
This morning I had to speak in 2 other churches, both Calvary Chapel churches. And one of them, I decided to do something I'd not been done before. I decided to have a discussion between Jesus and Muhammad. So I put Muhammad over here, and I was Jesus. I'll try not to be sacrilegious. And I said, Muhammad, I want to talk to you about some things. First of all, who and how can you claim to be a prophet? You're not in the prophetic line. You didn't do anything to prove you're a prophet. Now, all prophets either have to do a miracle or a prophecy. You didn't do either. That which you wrote down here completely confronts what I've written down for all the other prophets. How can you completely confront everything that's in my book? And then, of course, you have no idea who I am. You don't even know my name. I'm not Allah. Allah's not a name. It's a title. It means the God. What's my name? Why is it you don't even know my name?
The only significant point there so far is that the Quran refers to Jesus as Isa. Apart from that, well, let's see where he goes.
And look what you did to me. You took me off the cross and put another man in my place. How dare you do that? And I started getting indignant, really angry. And I said, but by the way, Muhammad, I said, where are you? You've disappeared. That's right, you never existed.
Look, Look, a woman stands up. A woman stands up.
Yeah.
She's so excited about this powerful
You know what?
information.
You can pause it there, and because the next part is this. I'd like to comment and write about this, and then there's something else about the next part.
Mm-hmm.
And the point here is, as you point out, people stand up and they clap, and this is supposed to be a profound parable or hypothetical scenario, and it completely overlooks the fact that even if this happened and Jesus and Muhammad are talking, which is kind of weird because Muhammad doesn't exist after all, but it doesn't change the fact that 2 billion Muslims still believe Jesus wasn't crucified and wasn't resurrected, okay, and that Muhammad did exist. So you see, he gives this sort of feel-good little narrative, and people get up and clap as if something's been proven, when in the real world, it's business as usual amongst Muslims. They believe all the negative stuff about Jesus that made him angry and that made him want to argue with Muhammad. So again, it's such a moot point. Okay, it's so irrelevant, and yet you can see the emotional response that he gets because it's become part of a sort of cult argument.
And it's just so weird because, I mean, think about this. We're told repeatedly in the Bible, false prophets and false teachers are going to come. We've known about Muhammad being a false prophet for a long time. We can expose him as the most obvious false prophet in history. You can look at all the biblical criteria of a false prophet. No one ever fulfilled more of these criteria of a false prophet than Muhammad. He's the most obvious false prophet in history. And Jay's basically saying, but isn't it easier just to say he didn't exist and then you don't have to deal with any of that stuff? And yay, wow, what a brilliant insight.
And it's this sort of egoism, kind of like, oh, you've convinced me, the non-Muslim, therefore all Muslims must agree because they all think like I do. I can't begin to enter such a mentality and how it actually operates.
Yeah, and not and it's not going to be a case of so I mean, just think about this, because people are dazzled and amazed. They're like, whoa, Mahmad was a title for Jesus, and all the church fathers use this, and everyone is using this title for Jesus, and that's where the name Muhammad came from. It was because of this. Wow, I guess Muhammad never did exist. Oh my goodness, I'm going to go share this all over the world. Guys, do you really think you're never going to run into a Muslim who actually looks that up and goes, show me one church father who said that. Show me one. You just said it was all over the place. Everyone's referring to Jesus as by this title.
Even
show me one.
It's not even that. It's the very assumption that a Muslim would even bother looking into it is absurd.
And they don't.
That's
they don't take it seriously.
Yeah. Even if the Muhammad argument wasn't busted as it was recently, it's still not. A Muslim's not going to be moved by that any more than a Christian is moved by the Paraclete. It means a comforter, and that's actually also one of Muhammad's names, and therefore, so I'm happy that they expose it. I'm not saying that's great, but I'm just trying to say, don't think that if it wasn't exposed that it was a really strong argument. It wasn't. Even if it really meant the praised one, that still was not a strong argument. Because it doesn't matter. Every Arabic name means something like that. So anyway.
Yeah, guys, that's important. What Raymond is saying is really important. He said it earlier, but the example of the Paraclete, right? So Muslims, when a Muslim speaker like Zakir Naik is speaking to a crowd just like this, and he says, that John 14, when it talks about the Paraclete, is actually about Muhammad. And they say that the word was actually modified there, and that it actually lines up and means the same thing as Ahmed and so on. The entire Muslim audience will, wow, this is such powerful stuff. This is so great. Does the fact that Muslims just will instantly accept what their speaker is saying, is that persuasive to you as a Christian? Do you think it's a good argument because they'll just go along with it and they'll accept it? No, you'd say if you were at all even going to take it seriously, you would look it up, right? You would start looking things up, but you probably wouldn't take it seriously at all because you'd just be like, what? The John 14 about the Holy Spirit, that's actually about Muhammad? Are you joking? Guess what? That's what Raymond's pointing out. Just because Jay can convince a room full of Christians when he's giving a bunch of kind of made up information, you try and running that with your argument and running that argument to Muslims. What makes you think they're going to take that seriously?
Or look at it this way, okay? The way think about, okay, the attack on Christ, right? The atheist attack, that he didn't exist. Christians went through this too, right? I find it, I guarantee you, all the people that sit and listen to Jay Smith and just are so into this and enthralled, they would never bother looking into the arguments against Christ's existence, even though they should, because that's much more important for them, right? If there's actually an attack on Christ not existing, I, as a Christian, if I took that seriously, I would have to address that before I'd worry about Muhammad, because Muhammad's a false prophet in my mind anyway. Exist or not exist, he has no relevance for me. And I guarantee you, the overwhelming majority of the people who are going out of their way to listen and follow these arguments, who are Christians, will never, ever, ever bother to look at arguments against Jesus. And my point in telling you this is that's fine. That's human nature. But so you have to expect that's exactly how Muslims approach this as well. When an attack on Muhammad's historicity is leveled by Christians, do you honestly think that this shocks them and, oh, wow, we need to read the arguments and we need to respond to them? Or do they do what most Christians say, which is, what a bunch of nonsense. I'm not even going to bother looking at it, especially when we go back to the principle that I pointed out, which is it can never be proven. Okay, there's no way with absolute certainty you can prove Jesus didn't exist, and you can't prove it about Muhammad because of the nature of history. So I find it funny how, a lot of the Christian nomos, their sort of behavior, they don't understand applies exactly to Muslims, and the sort of way they would never once doubt in Jesus, based on whatever argument you can present, is exactly how Muslims, even more so Muslims, because Muslims are told in the Quran, Christians and Jews will never rest until they get you to, sway you their way. So they already expect Christians and Jews to just attack Muhammad and lie and distort, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I just think the Christians especially need to be cognizant that the same sort of defense mechanisms that they have instinctively are amongst Muslims, and even more so.
Yeah, as evidenced by the fact that you have tons and tons and tons of nomos running around, and we see almost no reaction from Muslims. Yeah. And Jay's interpretation of that is because the Muslims are trying to marginalize this. They're trying to keep this information secret because they know it will destroy their entire religion.
Because it hides Islam from scrutiny. It hides their number one Achilles heel is Muhammad. And if you can hide Muhammad, and if Muhammad doesn't exist, then who cares about his life? It never happened. It's all lies. That actually serves Islam, and it helps it to hide, as opposed to what you and I would do, which is talk about the actual life of Muhammad as recorded in Islam's own scriptures. That's so hard for them to deny because it's their own words. They have to confront it. But an argument saying he never existed, and somehow I think Muslims have to contend with it and prove to me. One of Jay's big thing is... and I think you have the video. I'll wait till you play it. It's the one where he says, you have to prove it to me. You're the one who's making a claim. Yeah. But you continue with this one, and we'll remark on the ending.
All right. So Jay's about to give his concluding prayer here in a second.
What a waste of time.
What a waste of time examining Muhammad's life and exposing Muhammad's life, guys. It's a waste of time.
Because I say he never existed.
Yeah, you could just say he never existed, and that'll work wonders, even though we've never seen it work wonders at all.
Who'd have known?
Yeah.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for not only who you are, but the fact you did exist. We want to thank you that you did come to earth 2,000 years ago, and that you told us you were going to do so from the very beginning, right there with Adam and Eve. And all the way through history, you have pointed to who you were and what you were going to do. We knew your name. We were expecting. We knew that you were going to be called the Son of God. We knew that you were going to be called the Messiah. We knew that you were going to be called the Son of Man. And we knew that you had a name, Yahweh. What a name. And when you came, some of us saw you, some of us believed you, many did not. But Lord, we believed you. We know you existed. We know you came to earth, and you had to come to earth, because I'm damned if you didn't. Thank God you did exist. And thank God Muhammad didn't. Because what Muhammad has done to you, what Muhammad has done to your scriptures, what Muhammad done is to your story, what Muhammad has done to everything that we hold to be dear, I'm so glad he never existed. And I don't want to waste time anymore on that man who never existed. In Christ's name we pray.
You hear the amens? You say... That was so weird. What Muhammad did, what Muhammad did, what Muhammad did, what Muhammad did.
Even though he never existed.
It's so unthinkable that I'm glad he didn't exist. So this non-existent person did all this stuff.
So you see the contradiction there. But Yeah, exactly. But notice, and here, this is the perfect example to me of how the no mowery is now becoming sacralized as part of their faith. Okay, it's big. It's part of the prayer now. We have
Yeah,
faith.
now you pray
We have
about Muhammad
faith.
not existing. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you,
we have
Lord, for
faith in it.
Muhammad not existing.
Right. Yes, thank you for that, and we have faith in that, and that's why when you and I come and challenge it, we're infidels. That's what the word means. We're breaking
Yeah,
faith.
we're going
right?
against the prayers. We're interfering with their prayers and their liturgy now.
So that right there, I think, was a perfect example of the cultic nature that this movement is starting to take, just as it was with the woman who got up and started, hallelujah, because Muhammad doesn't exist. And even as he speaks, Jay can't help but continue contradicting himself. Thank God that man who did X, Y, and Z didn't exist. So then who did X, Y, and Z? And does it even matter when we realize 2 billion Muslims believe in X, Y, and Z, including all the negative stuff they said about the Trinity and Christ and Christianity? And so once again, we go in circles. It's just a totally moot point.
It's wild, wild stuff. How do you stop yourself from zooting Muslims? What's wrong with you? The WWF era that predates WWE was fantastic. Loved it. Yeah, that was.
I agree.
Back in the day, everyone wrestling was regional, and then they made it. They made it a much bigger thing. Here we go. I'd love and appreciate a deep dive into pre-Islamic Kaaba and its ties to modern Kaaba. Is Islam in the synagogue of Baal Hubal? Is that the second dilemma? How deeply are the roots set in Hubal, and how much is still present? Well, it's kind of like you take a ball, you take everything that was around Muhammad in 7th century Arabia and you roll it all up into a ball and you get Islam. You take a bunch of the pagan beliefs and the pagan practices centered around the Kaaba, and you take some of the stories that the Jews are telling and some of the Christians are telling, some of them like by heretical Christians and so on, and some various practices. You just take everything and put it all together and you roll it up into a ball and you get Islam. That's kind of why they called him the ear. You have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. It's a syncretic religion basically at its root, so you can expect to see all these various elements.
And Sketch here says the standard can't eliminate all historical figures. Yeah, that would be the problem. If your methodology could be used to destroy every historical figure, then probably need a better methodology. All right, let's check out the next video. This will be what Jay said about your claim that he's responding to, which should be interesting.
What the people are pushing back on is Muhammad itself. They want to say, yes, there is so much historical support for Muhammad. More so, remember what Raymond said, more so than for Jesus Christ.
It's good to know that you said, Raymond Ibrahim, you said there's more historical evidence and support for Muhammad than for Jesus. Let me just
but keep playing it because he's gonna
I'm gonna play it.
Poo me.
I'm gonna play it. Yeah, I just wanted people to catch this, and then I'm going back so we can see him say it again, and then
it hurts his feelings that I say this.
Yeah, I can't believe you say such a thing. I want to end this live stream right now because we've got Raymond Ibrahim who says such terrible things about Jesus.
Pushing back on is Muhammad itself. They want to say, yes, there is so much historical support for Muhammad. More so, remember what Raymond said, more so than for Jesus Christ. What a statement to make. I had to take that on. That was lovely.
Explain for our audience who Raymond is, because you talk about it in the presentation, but they haven't heard of.
What's up?
All right, let me just respond to what he's talking about. So as you can see, according to Jay Smith, I said there's more historical support for Muhammad than Jesus. And then, of course, he seems so disappointed because, again, that's the part where he's trying to show that I'm being a bad Christian, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what if there was more historic support? Does that make it that I'm a bad Christian? But the point is, I actually never said that. What I did is something that rather annoyed him during our debate, is I basically quoted his hero and the person who literally wrote the book about casting skepticism and doubt about early Islamic history, and that's Patricia Crona in her book Hagarism, and David Cook. I actually quoted an article that she wrote before she died, and I'll read to you the portion that got him really upset. So the article that she wrote is called "What We Actually Know About Muhammad," Patricia Crone, and she writes, "Look, quote." We probably know more about Muhammad than we do about Jesus, let alone Moses or the Buddha. There is no doubt that Muhammad existed. Muhammad is the only founder of a world religion who is attested in a contemporary source. All right. So I read these during our debates, and that's what he's referring to. I didn't say that. It's the person who actually spearheaded the claims against Muhammad, who he presents as one of his heroes, who actually said that. So the 2 points actually to emphasize here is, and one, yeah, it's actually true, because, and that doesn't make me a bad Christian. I'm just speaking about history. I'm not, if you say Muhammad, there was more sources about him, that doesn't mean that Jesus didn't exist. It just so happened to be that at that time, people were writing and recorded more about Muhammad than they did about Jesus. Again, that doesn't, and I'm talking about non-believers, non-Christians and non-Muslims.
So hang on. In other words, you would say there's more historical evidence about Donald Trump than there is about Jesus.
Yeah, which would make you an atheist, of course, if you say that by J. Smith's reasoning, right? But again, you know, here, but I love how he just evades the fact that it's not I that said that. I quoted his hero, who he tries to present as being the source, who says Muhammad never existed, and here she's flat out saying that, yeah, of course he existed.
So, and for people who don't understand the significance, this is kind of where a lot of this stuff takes off with Patricia Crona. So she's one of the pioneers of what's called the revisionist school of Islam, namely that, hey, we need to revise everything we, basically the standard narrative and so on, and take a more critical look at it. But then she's pointing out, and I've seen people quote her as someone who denied Muhammad's existence, and she's, no, Muhammad definitely existed. Saying Muhammad definitely existed. We have a ton of historical information about him. And so you quote that to Jay during your debate to say, hey, this is one of your heroes. And she's saying we have enough evidence about Muhammad's existence to conclude he definitely existed.
More than Jesus, Muhammad, more than Jesus, Moses, and Buddha.
And it's so disappointing that you'd be throwing that in.
Yeah, exactly. It just shows how I'm not a real Christian. Yeah.
I've got more to this clip. Was that what you wanted to see there?
Yeah, you can probably play more.
Oh, let's see. Well, we've got Frank Turek asking about you, and then Jay's responding that you've actually done good work, except on this issue.
About it on this show yet? Who's Raymond?
Okay, sorry. Raymond Ibrahim. I've never met him, but I love the guy. The guy is great. He's done me a favor, because Muslims won't take me on this. They would rather I not say anything, and that I just walk away in irrelevancy, because they don't want the world to hear what we're saying or what we're finding. This is a whole new polemic. It's called the historical polemic, the external polemic they're not ready for, and you can see why. In every other polemic, the stuff that you saw me using, that you and I use at Speaker's Corner, they would rather us engage in that, because then you're talking about the interpretation of Scripture, and they always say, well, you can interpret it better than you do. That they can walk away from those kind of discussions, but they can't walk away from this. So this Raymond Ibrahim, he is actually, I think he's from the West Coast. I don't know exactly where he lives. He is an Egyptian Copt, from the Coptic Church, but he has grown up in America, so he has an American accent, speaks Arabic beautifully, and he has an entire show called A Raymond Ibrahim. Go and look at it. He is really doing what you're doing, what many others are doing, but really in the Islamic context. He is using what we call the internal form of polemics. Internal means taking the Quran, opening it up, reading its pages, and then attacking it. Looking at Muhammad and what it says about, well, it doesn't say much about Muhammad, but about the Prophet, and attacking it. That's called internal critique. You look at what Muslims believe, at what they're saying, and you confront that. That's what I did for 30 years. Now I've come with the external critique, and Raymond doesn't like it. He thinks it's the weakest of all polemics.
Wait, is Raymond
I also think it's the weakest of polemics. Let me see. Back this up.
Doesn't like it. He thinks it's the weakest of all polemics.
Wait, is Raymond a Muslim or a Christian?
He's a Christian. He's a Coptic. He's from Coptic Church.
Okay, so he is a Coptic Christian, but he's trying to say that Islam or Muhammad is well supported, and you say in your presentation, you go through his 10 points, and you refute each one of them.
Every one of them. Yeah. No, there are more than 10, but
I haven't seen this debate. So this is after the debate.
No, this is, okay, so I made my 2 videos, and then, the video we just watched where Jay makes his prayer? That long video in front of that church, supposedly he responded to supposedly 10 points I made. Okay. And as I pointed out later, most of those points I had never even said. They were just, and that's why they were total straw men. And the points I did make, he actually, like the Shia thing, he just completely like bypassed it immediately. And then we had our debate.
Might be super interesting at some point if we, I'm not talking about you and me. I mean, we Christians, and some Christians would want to basically play each one of your points and then see how he responded in there, and see how it actually responds to what you're saying. That might be fun.
Yeah, I didn't even make 10 points. That was the other thing, is a lot of those points were, I think, points that he set up because he wanted to knock down, and they weren't even part of my arsenal. It was just two very short videos I made, and most of them were about the 7th century attestations from non-Muslims and the Shia thing. It was actually 3 points is what I did. It was the Shia thing, the attestation 7th century, and the argument from embarrassment. And I used them in that order. Okay. And he really, I think he spent like 30 seconds on those, but in the 2-hour video, he spent them on these other arguments that I never even said, and presented them as if they were mine, which is fine, whatever.
That's not fine.
You know, I mean, he was attacking the standard Islamic narrative, which, by the way, I want to go on record and say, I don't think it should be. Another reason that the standard Islamic narrative gets just immediately dismissed, honestly, is because it's written by Muslims. And just people are being hostile. Oh, they're Muslims or liars. I'm not going to buy into it. I'm not going to believe it. And the other reason is, oh, it's so late. Well, it's not that late when you compare it to other historical documents that we accept. All right. As you know, Jay, when he dates them and he gives them these very, very late dates, he's talking about extant manuscripts that still exist. And he won't say that, oh, well, it's based on something older. And as I pointed out to him, if we're going to go by this kind of logic, so if you're not aware, or if the viewers aren't aware, Jay's argument is that, let's say the Muwatta, okay, which is a hadith and does mention Muhammad, and it's supposed to be maybe like 120 years after Muhammad, which is not very late. But he'll argue, well, the extant manuscript is like 500 years after.
Yeah, he does
and
this
therefore
with Ibn
you
Ishaq
can't
as well.
trust it. What's that?
He does this with Ibn Ishaq as well. Well, you don't actually have you don't have the original copy of Ibn Ishaq. You've got a later recension by Ibn Hisham and stuff, and yeah.
So
and then you don't even have that. You don't even have the original of that, and so on. And so it's it's a situation. By the way, just so this is one of the issues that bothers me about all of this. It's, you'll take someone like Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq says he's quoting all these earlier people. Ibn Ishaq is written about 100, 120 years after the time of the events he's reporting, but he's quoting all these people who are earlier and saying, I got it from this guy, and he got it from this guy, and this guy said in his book, and this guy said in that source, and this guy said in this source. But we don't have those sources anymore. And so the conclusion is, well, therefore they never existed, and later guys are making this up. It's like, where are you getting that from? I mean, we deal with this. We deal with this in Christianity, right? I mean, you have people quoting like Papias and so on. It's like, you don't have Papias anymore. You don't have that. You have later people quoting it. Matter of fact, if you go back, like the pre-Socratic philosophers, these are philosophers before Socrates, you don't have their writings. You have people like Aristotle quoting them and saying they said this. I mean, just imagine if you use this methodology on anything else. If you don't have the original, it never happened.
And the ultimate example, which I used, and he didn't have an answer for, or I'll give you his answer, is, well, what about the Old Testament? Okay, do you know that the extant fragments of the Old Testament, the oldest ones, are about maybe 1,200 years after Moses, who supposedly wrote the first 5 books? By Jay's standards, that's all garbage. Throw it out. We can't believe it. It's all lies. It's all hearsay, let alone what precedes Moses, Adam and Eve, and all the way to him. So you see by his very logic, and when I brought this up, again, he just shooed it away and said, oh, Raymond, nobody's expecting to find, Old Testament. It's because it's so old as opposed to the Islamic stuff. Really? You think that's going to work with a Muslim? If I'm a Muslim and I say, oh, you're saying the Hadith and the Sirah and whatever, we're only going to go by extant versions, and we can't trust that it was copied on something older. And then when I ask you about the Old Testament, and as a Muslim, as you know, Muslims believe that both the Bible, the Old and New Testament, was taharraf, meaning it was tampered with, right? So you're going to tell me, oh, well, we don't have it either. The newest one we have, or the oldest one we have, is 12 centuries after the original, that just proves the Muslim point, right? That, oh, well, there you go. Then obviously it was distorted. You don't have the original one. So my point is, you see how, he's taking this sort of almost, it's an immature approach. I'll attack your books and I'll put it at the highest standard and the highest bar for them to pass. But when the same argument perfectly applies to my scriptures, oh, well, no one's looking for it because this is the Bible and we're not going to do that. I mean, come on, this is supposed to be a debate with a non-believer. I don't know.
Yeah, and I just brought this up as an example in a recent live stream, but I was talking about the satanic verses. I have 50 Muslim sources on the satanic verses, 50 of them, and was asking the nomos, like, how do you explain this? Because if you want to say someone invented the story, like, it's not just inventing the story, it's inventing a ton of different versions traced back to a ton of different people. And they all claim they're quoting this guy and quoting this guy and quoting this and quoting that and so on. So if you're talking about fabrication, you're not just fabricating a story. You're fabricating a ton of sources, and not only that, you're fabricating like the different layers because the original story is the worst. It's Muhammad. Satan took control of Muhammad's emotions and then used Muhammad's desire to reach his own people. Used that to slip a false revelation promoting shirk and polytheism and stuff. And Muhammad fell for it, and he delivers the satanic verses to his followers. He bows down in honor of the satanic verses. His followers bow down, and then the pagans bow down as well. And then later on, Gabriel comes up to him and says, "Hey, what'd you do? And Satan tricked you, man. He duped you. What's wrong with you? You just committed shirk." And then Muhammad has to repent and so on. But I mean, you look at the earliest version, and then you look at, the version from a generation later when it gets watered down. And then it was Muhammad didn't say it. Satan imitated his voice, and his followers thought it was Muhammad speaking. Right. And you go later still and they water it down more until you get to the time of Bukhari. Bukhari gives the basic story of all the polytheists for some reason mysteriously bowing down in honor of Surah 53, but there's no reason for it. And
it's very realistic. The transmission is very realistic. It's what you would expect people would behave and how they would edit it based on what it really happened. It's not something that, we just randomly make it up in this sequence because it's for whatever.
Yeah. And so I was asking the nomos, how do you explain that? And they were saying, I kid you not, the main explanation was maybe a later ruler wanted to draw more attention to himself and make himself look good by comparison, and therefore he made up this story about Muhammad and imposed it on the people and so on. But I mean, think about this, because he didn't just say, let me make up a story about Muhammad, saying, let me make up the original story and trace that back to a bunch of guys, and then the next generation's watered down version, and then the next generation's watered down version, and so on. It's like, what level of insane right now it reminds me of like what Muslims say about Jews, how they're like they're coming up with all these diabolical brilliant plots and so on. It's like, how brilliant do you think these guys were? It's going to be completely irrelevant in its time. But he's like, you know what, more than 1,000 years from now there's going to be people looking at this historically, and I want to be able to show how this story is being watered down and so on over time, and I'm going to attribute it to 50 sources. And so it's like, seriously,
all that to prove my point. That's what's going on. This is all sophistry, okay, and absurd conjecturing and hypothesizing to prove my agenda, or the Nomo agenda, basically. Instead of, like you said, Occam's razors and just, it's plain in front of you what happened, right? It's just very obvious.
Yeah. So that's all opposed to the obvious. Muhammad delivered the satanic verses. It was a huge embarrassment. And so Muslims knew it was embarrassing. And, as the farther they get away from it, the more they water it down. That makes perfect sense. It's exactly what you would expect. It's exactly what you would expect them to do.
Exactly.
And somehow it's actually the reverse. It's a later guy invents a story and then makes it more extreme in the sources as you get closer. It's just really, really weird stuff. But let's let them. This is about to get there's about a minute left of this, but check this out.
The 10 major points.
Right.
And so what he is, and you can see for an awful lot of Christians who have, like David Wood is the same way, or Hatun Tosh, my colleague, they are all trying to shut me down because
everyone, have you ever once, up until we very recently started attacking the position, because now he wasn't just saying it about me, he was saying it about my friends and so on, and because he was getting exposed for using just completely made up information. Have you ever heard me try to shut Jay Smith down? Once.
No, me neither.
Anytime. No. Yeah.
No.
Instead, this comes up regularly in
Oh,
conferences.
he
and
said
stuff.
that in the video, the 2 hour video where he says the prayer. He said that about me like 5 times. Raymond Ibrahim's this guy who's trying to shut me down.
Yeah, because we're trying to cover up the truth because we're evil, everyone. But guys, think about this, because he makes up that we're trying to shut him down, and then makes up the motivation for why we're trying to shut him down. So guys, if you've paid attention in live streams and at conferences and stuff where this comes up in the Q&A, you can go back every single time I've been asked about this. What do I say? Every single time, because it's what I believed. So I don't believe Muhammad existed, but I understand there are all sorts of problems with the Muslim sources, and so you can be more skeptical than I am and so on. But I think it's great that we're running different arguments and see where they go. And eventually, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But sometimes, especially if you got like a newer argument, like the ones Jay's using, sometimes you have to run the argument and see where it leads and see where it goes. So, yep, I'm in favor of running all these arguments. That's what I've said every single time. What does he say? What does he say when he's representing what happened? I'm trying to shut him down. And he's about to give the reason we're all trying to shut him down. And he tossed out, did he say that Hatun's been trying to shut him down? Is that?
I think so.
Let's see.
Trying to shut me down, because if Christians who have, like David Wood is the same way, or Hatun Tosh, my colleague, they are all trying to shut me down.
Trying to shut him down.
If there was no Muhammad, then where are they going to go for all their great work, all their great material to attack him?
If we really believed he didn't exist, wouldn't we all just go in that direction and say we can wreck Islam like this? We don't believe that. I don't even know where Hatun stands on this issue anymore, because she listens to Jay's stuff. But if we thought there was a better argument that was actually correct and this could be used to destroy us, wouldn't we just go with that, Jay?
Well, no, I think he's being more cynical. I think he's trying to suggest what I pointed to earlier, which is kind of like, this is our bread and butter, so we don't want Muhammad
I'm saying on the theory, given the theory that it's our bread and butter, why wouldn't our bread and butter just switch to Muhammad didn't exist? I mean, obviously their audience is full of Christians who love it. They love it. So why not? Why wouldn't we just, let's jump on the Jay bandwagon?
That's definitely an option. But the real point is it doesn't matter what you guys, the nomos, are saying. Muslims, 2 billion, still believe in Islam, and therefore our job security is fine, despite what you guys tell yourselves in your echo chamber. That's the point. He's trying to act as if, because once again, it's because they say there's no Muhammad, ergo every Muslim also agrees, and guess what? The narrative's falling apart, and you and I have nothing to talk about anymore. No, sorry, believe all you want about no Mowry. The Muslims don't, and they're still going strong and believing in their faith just as they always have. So, yeah, job security is fine on that end if that was the case.
Yeah, so in other words, there would be, even if we thought Jay had the truth, we would have no reason to think that this would be a problem for all the gravy train to continue, because he could spend the rest of his life arguing this. There's still tons of people to reach, and therefore we'd have an endless supply of people to criticize Muhammad too, regardless. So in other words, false that we've been trying to shut him down, false that this is our motivation. He can't get his mind around the fact that anyone just disagrees with him and doesn't, especially when we look at his arguments and it's, did you know that all the church fathers were saying Muhammad is a title for Jesus? And then it turns out to be completely bogus. Back this up a little.
No Muhammad, then where are they going to go for all their great work, all their great material to attack him?
There's nothing else to talk about.
Well, yeah, but the Muslims believe Muhammad existed. So David's doing an internal critique, as you say, that, Muhammad,
that's all that matters.
Married young people and had 15 wives and did many awful things. He cut the head off of all these Jews. He said, kill any Jew under your power. He did all these, what we would say are evil things. And so David's taken that approach. You've tried that for 30 years and it hasn't gotten many converts.
What planet has this guy been living on? You've been trying this. So Jay's been attacking Muhammad for 30 years and it hasn't seen, where's he been? I've seen tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of, in matter of fact, almost every person I've ever seen who left Islam after finding out all this stuff about Muhammad. That's when they start doubting Islam. And apparently Jay's just been living in some alternative reality. The apostasy rate among young Muslims went from around 0% 20 years ago to 26% most recently. What is that? Is it because of the powerful evidence that Muhammad never existed? No, it's because we made the information more common knowledge. So now Muslims are finding out about it more and more. They're finding out, hey, everything I was told all my life by my imam does not line up with what my own sources say. That's led to the avalanche of apostasy. And then Jay's saying, oh, no one, that doesn't work. That's why we need to go in this next direction. Where again, I've never seen one Muslim leave Islam. There may be Muslims who've left because of this. I've never seen one of them. And so the idea that this is just more effective and that old approach doesn't work, if that's what Jay is saying. Now, this was just Frank interpreting what Jay said as this. I don't know if Jay said that earlier in the talk or something like that, but if Jay's actually, if Jay's actually saying that, this doesn't work. This is what really works.
He said that. He said that in our debate. I mean, he said that. And just to sort of elaborate on what you're saying, and I pointed this out before, but I'm privy to another window that most people are not to, because I'm an Arabic speaker. And I watch polemics against Islam from former Muslims, from, Abuna's father Zakaria Butros, brother Rashid.
Thousands of people were leaving Islam from them.
And all of their polemics are based on the character and nature of Muhammad, not his non-existence. No Arab speaker who is like you saying, thousands, if not millions of Muslims are causing them to leave Islam, engages in that argument. They all engage in the so-called internal argument based on the character and nature of Muhammad, because it's so by nature powerful. You're fighting fire with fire. Muslims can't evade the points that we make, which is, it's your book. I'm going by your book. Your book says this, and now I'm asking you to use your reason and say, is it good for a prophet to act this way? Is this just for him to treat women like sex slaves, and you can have as many sex slaves as you capture, and you can, sleep with young children and everything else? Okay, that is a powerful argument. And that's why I think we were talking earlier, you showed that poll, which showed the number one reason Muslims leave is because of the nature and character of Muhammad. And that poll didn't even show that Muslims leave Islam because they think it didn't exist at all. It wasn't even the top, I think it was 5 points that it showed. It wasn't even number 5. So it's absurd. Again, it makes you wonder, what's the motive here? That he would actually say that the argument that does work is the one that doesn't work. And the one that doesn't work is the one that has to work, even though it doesn't even make sense and it's so ineffective because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to me because back in the day, if you go back 20 years, in Christianity in America, it was taken as standard, just standard, even in churches that are talking about how to witness to Muslims and how to convert Muslims and so on. It was standard. Never criticize Muhammad, never criticize the Quran. And when I was hearing this, it's like, okay, I only knew of a couple converts back then, but it was like hearing that all the things they were taught about Muhammad were false according to their own sources was a huge part. And churches are saying, don't ever share this stuff because you'll hurt the Muslims' feelings and you're going to drive him away and he's never going to listen to you. So just preach the gospel and don't ever criticize Muhammad or the Quran. And I'm sitting there thinking, all of my experience goes against all of my experience with Muslims, like flies in the face of that. And so where's this actually coming? It's funny because I actually traced it to where they were getting it from. One, they were getting it from missionaries to Muslim countries, right? Who come back and speak at churches and stuff. And like, well, it makes sense if you're a missionary in Saudi Arabia not to go around criticizing Muhammad.
You don't want to get
that
killed.
Makes sense. What's that got to do with us in the U.S., right? And the other place they were getting it from was interfaith dialogues, where you'd have like a Muslim speaker and a Christian speaker and a Jewish speaker, and they all get together and they said, and the Muslim speaker told us, isn't it great to build bridges? But if you start criticizing Muhammad and the Quran, you're not going to have these bridges anymore, and we're not going to want to talk to you. So, and I'm just sitting there going, can you say that with a straight face that you think the Muslim speaker at an interfaith event was giving you valuable information on how to reach Muslims with the gospel? Like that's what you're taking seriously? Because I have to say, if I heard a Muslim speaker telling me how to reach Muslims with the gospel, I'd probably automatically believe the opposite of what he's saying, because I don't think he's going to actually be trying to tell you how to reach Muslims with the gospel and so on. So anyway, but it was funny because back then, it's like all my experience is telling me one thing, and if you go like 2009 or so, now I'm already seeing tons of people leaving Islam and stuff like that. But I was on. They put me on stage with Zakaria Butros, and I was like, because I was familiar with him, and that's back when he had like a $50 million Al-Qaeda bounty on his head and stuff like that. But I was hearing about all these thousands of converts from this guy's talks and stuff, and I was like, all the Arab guys who are seeing thousands of converts are blasting away at Muhammad. They're just blasting away, and they're exposing Muhammad left and right. And you've got all these churches, and at best they'll say, you know, after 17 years of preaching to this Muslim, he converted and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm going to listen to these guys because what they're saying is exactly what all my experience has shown, and you've got something and you're saying it, and I don't know where you're getting it from, but I've never seen any evidence that this is the great position. But keep in mind, even back then, I was like, okay, if you want to just preach the gospel, go ahead. But if you don't want to criticize Muhammad or criticize the Quran, I think it's great if you're going around and you're just going to preach the gospel. That's great. It's great because there probably are Muslims who've already been wrestling with issues and stuff like that, and you come along, you preach the gospel. That can be great. But it has to be important to blast away at Islam. So I've always been fine with different approaches. It's when you come along and say, no, this is the only way to do things, and anyone else who does anything else is wrong. And it gets kind of weird. But now we've gone kind of full circle, and now we're on to it's a waste of time to argue all this stuff that we've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of people leave Islam, all that stuff, big waste of time. Don't follow that path, Christians. Just start arguing Muhammad never existed.
And I've watched multiple news programs and talk shows in Arabic on satellite, and they complain literally about how Zakaria Butros and Brother Rashid and the polemicists that they are making Muslims leave Islam. And what is their method? What is their polemic? It's absolutely 100% about the nature of Muhammad. Okay, so for anyone to ever argue that is weak or that is ineffectual, I mean, that's crazy. That is the number one tried and true polemic that every Muslim cites, and even Muslims who are angry about this, like I told you when I watch these shows, that's what they point to, and that's why that will get you killed. I have yet to hear anyone complain about these guys are casting doubt in the existence of Muhammad. I'm sorry, I just haven't. That doesn't happen. Again. If someone wants to use that and wants to preach no moery, that's fine by me, as long as they're moderate no-mos. But when they become, cantankerous and all they want to do is fight with us, okay, then I have an issue.
Yeah, we've got all these radical no-mos coming out of the closet. It's creepy. Yeah. Dr. Ibrahim, how special were the martyrs of Otranto?
Well, I mean, for those who don't know, the martyrs of Otranto, I actually made a video about it and wrote about it. It was their anniversary was recent. And it's basically the Ottomans invaded Italy, Otranto, and they massacred all the Italians. And then they had like 813 captive men, and they enslaved the women and children. And they tried to be magnanimous, and they said, okay, all you have to do is renounce Christ and embrace Islam. And one of the men said, you know what, we fought for our land and we lost. Now it's time to fight for our souls. And every one of the 813 refused. And they were decapitated ritually, and their archbishop was sawn in half to cries to Allahu Akbar. And, and again, so it's very important. And until today, we have their skulls in the Church of Otranto. There's an actual glass case that has all their skulls, these hundreds of Christians. And again, so, what helps a person understand an event like that? That Muhammad II, who was the actual sultan at the time, was following his prophet as he said he was, or that this is all a big lie and a big conspiracy and Muhammad never existed. You see how this just introduces so many complexities that are just unnecessary and that just trip up non-Muslims and Christians who are trying to make sense of events.
And that it's Jesus is actually at the root of all this, because it was all about Jesus originally, and it was a bunch of Christians doing this stuff who started this all off.
Calling themselves the praised ones and killing other Christians, and it's just
Hey, check this out. This stream is too hunky, hard to focus. We know we have that effect on people. Were there Ethiopian knights in the Crusades? Don't know if anyone's ever studied that.
Depends on what you mean by knights. In the European fashion, probably not. But I do believe. I mean, there might be, because Ethiopians were Christians, of course, at the time. So I don't know. I'm not going to conjecture. I'm not Jay Smith to conjecture. So
yeah. Well, you just make up a bunch of stuff. That works. Raymond, finish your Sword and Scimitar. Good book and going to order another.
Great.
That's good.
Glad to hear it.
And I will, if you're watching this later, I will add links to Raymond's books in the description
Thank
here.
you.
They won't be here now, but I'll do that later. And can the relationship Muhammad had with the men of Al-Zut be used to make the argument that Islam is actually LGBT plus inclusive? You know, it's
Not really, because he tried to hide it, so it wasn't publicly celebrated because he did it out in the desert. So it was still not being celebrated like the June stuff.
It's actually interesting because this popped up recently, but when I was making the video, the sort of part 2 on the men of Al-Zut, and how there was this weird belief that men could inject their manliness into other men and so on. As I was quoting some passages, some of them were like how long homosexuality continued in the Muslim world, relationships and their obsession with young boys. You couldn't officially do it, but it was very common practice for up until Western nations started making them stop this stuff. But it was interesting because someone sent a link to one of Paul Williams' posts, but Paul Williams is a gay Muslim apologist. And one of his links was to homosexuality in the Muslim world and so on. So anyway, but the point is there are a couple people who might want to use the story of Al-Zut. So Paul Williams, if you want to use the story of Al-Zut to defend things, might want to try that. Very impressive. And Raymond says words. What my brain hears: biceps. That's true. And Dr. Ibrahim, how about some speculative history? What if the Mongols had converted to Christianity? Would the Crusades have been different? How so? We don't have time for a lot of speculation here.
They think I'm Jay Smith. Well, actually, that was one of the one of the motivations of the Crusaders. They thought the Mongols were the people of Prester John, this mythical Christian king from the Far East, who was going to come and help them do a pincer movement against Islam. And some of them did convert to Nestorianism, Christians, but a lot of them, like the Golden Horde, of course, converted to Islam. But yeah, and there were alliances between Mongols and Crusaders against Muslims. But in the end, the Mongols broke up, and a lot of them were Muslim, did convert to Islam, and they became a scourge of Eastern Europe, especially towards Russia and the Slavic nations, the Golden Horde. So. And
for some
reason,
those
are facts, not conjectures, just so you know.
You know what else is a fact that we've got? There's just tons of comments about Al-Zut. From the leather straps of the anus to the men of Al-Zut, we have come far.
I'm gonna have to make another video about Al-Zut. I've been thinking about it, and there's other things to add.
There can never be too many videos about Al-Zut.
Can't be enough Al-Zut.
Yeah. The more Al-Zut, the merrier. That's what Muhammad said, and that's what we say now. But yeah, you have Sunan Abu Dawud 203, where Muhammad said the eyes are the leather strap of the anus. So we popularized that for a while, and now everyone knows about Al-Zut. And here you have Al-Zut split Muhammad's moon. Yeah, it's the origin of the splitting the moon. Also could call it Muhammad's real night journey. But can AP remake the AC/DC song "You Shook Me All Night Long" and make it about Muhammad and Al-Zut? I bet he can. And one more, and then we'll jump into the next little clip. The kill shot for Nomo is how Momo died, like an idiot. Why would you make up that your prophet died the death of false prophets? So yeah, they're talking about Muhammad dying by poisoning, especially after woman's whole family all the men in her family get killed by Muslims, and then she offers to cook dinner. Muhammad's like, duh, yeah, I like food.
Who would make this stuff up? I'm trying to create this hagiographical awesome prophet to legitimize my Arab empire. And from top to bottom, it's just full of warts and flaws and embarrassment.
Not bottom in the Al-Zut sense, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I think I've asked the Nomos for this before, and they said maybe Muhammad was blaming a Jewish woman for poisoning him because they wanted to stir up more hostility against Jews. And it's like, wait, if you could make up anything, why not? Why have him being a complete idiot? Why not say he went out and fought them, violent, in battle and fought valiantly and something like that, or they assassinated him or something like. Yeah. Why do you have to make him the idiot of the story?
Well, apparently because that was cool for 7th century Arabs.
Yeah, it was just we didn't know it back then, but back
then
an
idiot prophet.
Yeah, being the dumbest person in the world was just super cool.
We just don't get it because we're modern people.
Yeah, we're modern people. We think it's stupid to die over a roasted lamb. Anyway, here's a clip of Jay on the burden of proof.
It's not me to prove. Raymond wants me to prove he didn't exist. How can you prove he didn't exist? That's a non sequitur. He has to prove that he existed since he's making the claim.
That's
so
not a
therefore,
non-sequitur.
in order for him to make the claim, he has to prove that this man was called Muhammad, that he lived in a place called Mecca, that he received a book called the Quran, not just bits and pieces and fragments, all 114 surahs, and that this all happened before 632. They have to. Everybody now has, and every Muslim has to answer those 4 questions. How can you do that as a Muslim?
And I actually want to tie that together with his claim about the topic here, because that's also a short clip. But let's see.
In the debate that I did last week with Raymond Ibrahim, when you look at the debate, it was a debate that was set up really to answer the question, who is, or did the Muhammad of Islam exist? That was the title.
He sounded like he was about to say, who's the real Muhammad? But he switched it to...
the goalpost is always changing, so...
Yeah, let's see what he says.
Who is, or did the Muhammad of Islam exist? That was the title of the debate. They say it was the title that we challenged Raymond to because of the fact that he came up very clearly in his 2 videos in April saying, I don't even have to look at Jay's videos. I know how to prove that Muhammad existed. It turns out that Muhammad that he was supporting is really a historical Muhammad, or Muhammad,
that's what I believe
whichever
in.
way you want to put
Muhammad
it.
of history,
Not the Muhammad of Islam. He did not want to take that on. I now understand why he wanted to go first. I couldn't figure out why he wanted to go first since we were doing the challenge. It would make sense that I would go first.
I didn't want to go first. It was offered to me, and I said, okay, yeah, because I'm the one who started this by making my videos. I'll make my points. But just
and just obviously, you would be the affirmative usually goes first, unless there's some weird reason for
and
the
not to mention,
not to
I thought the first is actually the weaker position because the second one now has ammo, whereas I'm just talking. So anyway, so first of all, for him to say that this wasn't the agreed topic, just to show you how it's not true. Okay, he already mentioned my 2 videos. My 2 videos, like I told you, I didn't make 10 points. Anyone can watch them. They're online. I made 3 points. I argued that Muhammad from the 7th century non-Muslim sources was real. I argued that the Sunni Shia split proved that his DNA is in action because that's what they believe. And I made the argument from embarrassment. It was just those 3. And he wanted immediately to debate me. Now, if you want to debate me on what I just said, it was those 3 points. And so when the debate started, I made those 3 points, but even more emphatically with quoting Patricia Corona, etc. So I find it kind of strange for him to now be like, oh, well, that's not the real Muhammad. That's another kind of Muhammad. And he just keeps, and the criteria. Before I end the point that the first point he said is I have to prove it, right? Mm-hmm. The burden of proof is on me. And also on Muslims. He brought that up during the debate, and I think I shut him down right away because I said, yeah, technically speaking, theoretically, it is. But in this case, Muslims don't have to prove a thing to you. Okay, they've offered you the dawah to believe in Islam, right? And people like you and I, we believe Muhammad existed, but we haven't accepted it. We think he's a false prophet. Okay, kafir, infidels. You, Jay, are saying he didn't prove to me he exists. No, we're not going to bother proving anything. Kafir, you're an infidel. So it's kind of silly for him to think that Muslims are troubled and they feel that there's this burden of proof to prove to us that Muhammad existed. No, they don't. It's a totally inapplicable point to even make. He's trying to bring the standards of philosophy as if Muslims are going to care about this, and they're not. Anyway, I'll stop for a while.
I would also think that's just ridiculous. I mean, think if someone comes along and says, "Hey, Julius Caesar never existed," and you say, "I mean, obviously Julius Caesar exists." Well, prove that he exists, and I'm just going to play skeptic. Well, if you're denying a major historical figure, wouldn't you have to show that you have some really great explanation for what happened and why everyone thinks?
That's the point. That's the point. So, the historical standard is that, look, we have the records, and you need to give me some really good reason not to believe it. That's how we do history. If we start off from the first premise, which is, I don't care about the primary sources, they're all lies, Everyone has to disappear. In fact, I mentioned Caesar during the debate, and I pointed out, Caesar seems to be very real, because guess what? We have his it's not his autobiography, but his journal, basically when he was in Gaul, and we have it, right? And Caesar is something like 30 BC. He's active at that time. But guess what? The actual extant version of the journal that he wrote is about 800 years after Caesar. So once again, if we use J. Smith's impossible standards, Caesar never existed. Alexander the Great, of course, never existed, because all the primary sources come 300 or so years after him. I give multiple examples. All the Viking kings that nobody doubts their existence, Harold Hardrada, all of them, if the famous ones, okay? Guess what? They all come from one guy, Snorri Sturluson, writing in Iceland about 500 years, okay? 400 to 500 years after these guys died. I've never heard anyone say, oh, they're not real because this is too late and you got to prove it to me. Okay, so if you use that standard, nobody comes out alive in history. Everyone has to disappear. And again, I give you the Old Testament argument. It applies the same way. It goes both ways. You can't just create these impossible standards and don't apply them to anybody, but then throw them all at Muhammad. And the more they're proven, the more you raise the bar higher and keep saying, oh, well, now you have to prove to me all the surahs were written. It's just, it becomes ridiculous, but that's they fall for that, I suppose.
Yeah, and the situation here is, guys. So what Raymond said is, technically, in a technical sense, burden of proof is on the affirmative and so on. But in situations like, you have to be careful about someone just shifting complete burden of proof. Why? Because there's a bunch of evidence you're trying to account for. And if you've got an explanation that accounts for this evidence, and you come along and say, no, that's not the correct explanation. Well, unless you show me there's a better explanation, that still is the best explanation. It's like the new atheists did this. Back in the day, atheists used to actually argue for atheism. They'd say, but the problem of evil and divine hiddenness, if God wanted us to believe in him, why didn't he just appear to us? They'd use arguments. You got to the new atheists, and then it was, you can't prove to us that God exists. You can't prove it, so prove it. And you'd say, well, why don't you show us how they? No, we're not the ones making the claim. You're making the claim. And they shifted the burden of proof completely over to the theist, and then they just play skeptic. Guess what? It is easy to play skeptic. So anytime someone says, you prove this and I get to play skeptic, I usually flip it on atheists when they come at me like that. They're like, prove to me God exists, religitard. I'm already thinking this is not a person I seriously want to have a discussion with. So I will instantly go, first prove to me that you exist, because I don't want to be having an argument with a non-existent person. First prove to me you exist. And then it gets real fun all of a sudden. They're like, well, who do you think's talking to you? I was like, you're online. How do I know it's not a bot or a monkey typing on a keyboard just randomly coming together? How do I know? How do I know I'm not dreaming?
Playing skeptic is so easy.
Easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Easiest thing in the world. And it is what Jesus mythers do with Jesus. If you get into a burden of proof and you accept that and they get to play skeptic, guess what? They'll explain everything, guys. They have an explanation for everything. If you listen to them, they'll say, belief in Jesus as an actual person. It started off with some people who believed him as like a divine figure, something like that. And they had a belief in him and they had a cult around him. And then eventually that evolved. And later on, you got to people who thought he was a real person walking around and so on. Any piece of evidence you can give them, they can be skeptical about. It's very easy, especially as Raymond's pointing, to be skeptical about history and so on. You can always make up something. And if you take the method of J. Smith, you can always make up a reason for making up anything. They made this up because of this. They made up this story about Jesus because of that. They made this up because of that. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. That's why the new atheism took also, because you could train any idiot to do this. You could train any idiot to go, prove that that's not enough evidence. Prove that to me. In reality, if you have someone like Muhammad, who's the center figure of a religion, and you have piles of sources on him, and you can trace his stuff back pretty darn early, not as early as lots of, we would love it if there were just really, really early sources on there. But people didn't always preserve writings and stuff, and later people quoted them and so on. But if you're saying this guy,
by historical standards, they are early. If you compare it across the board, they're early.
Yep. Yeah, they are.
And go ahead. But
I just wanted to finish. It's basically, if you're saying no, at the heart of all of this, as Jay was saying, I can't believe what this man did to you, and I can't believe Muhammad did this, and I can't believe Muhammad did that, I can't believe Muhammad did that, I can't believe a non-existent man did all this. Right? That's how we feel. I Can't believe a non-existent man did all this stuff, is responsible for all this. At the core of all of this is someone who did not exist, right? So the burden of proof here is you're kind of the one presenting a crazy conspiracy theory on this one. So if you think that is the correct position, you have to show that you have some better explanation that accounts for the evidence even better. But when we do that, you start to even basically explain what are these references to Muhammad and so on. You start saying, oh, yeah, it's about Jesus, and it's because the church fathers were using this, and it's because of Song of Solomon, and it's all made up. And so I can't regard that as a better explanation. And so I'm left with an explanation that fits all the facts. And yes, the Muslim sources can be weak, and yes, there were fabrications, and yes, there were exaggerations, and yes, they made up a ton of stuff. But the explanation for the core of the story makes a lot of sense and accounts for the evidence. Yours doesn't, because it's all made up. So why am I supposed to go with yours and not this one? Oh, I forgot. I'm being paid.
Because and it's also an article of faith. But one point I just want to really emphasize to people, which is that the number one argument that the nomos have, okay, is that all the Muslim sources are just too late. All right, they're much later than what they purport to record, right? And but the fact is, this is what they don't tell people, that is pretty standard for history. In fact, they're actually pretty close, all right, more often than not. Okay, John of Damascus, immensely close, but even the Muslim sources, okay, 150 years, it's not that bad. I just told you the sagas, all the Vikings that we accept and take for granted are about 400 years after they existed. And these guys are much later than Muhammad, by the way, okay? So when records are presumably better. So I'm just trying to say that the number one argument that they have is really a non-argument in my mind, as someone who really understands the nature of historical records, because it applies to almost everything. But they play this game and make you think that everyone else, we have their DNA, we have their license, we have their social security card, we have their teeth, No, it's all so tenuous, it's all so fragile, it's all so fragmented for everybody. Okay, but they want you to think it's not like that, and this is just a peculiar weakness about Muhammad, when in fact, as I quoted from Patricia Crone, he's actually pretty well attested to.
Yeah, and so it is this. Yeah, guys, keep your eyes peeled when someone comes along and says, hey, you have to prove this, and I get to sit back and play skeptic and just deny everything you're putting forward. At some point, if there is evidence that they're dismissing, oh, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this explains it, maybe that explains it. At the end of the day, either they have a better explanation that fits the evidence or they don't. It's just like, if you argued against an atheist against if an atheist is arguing against the existence of God, and you say, hey, the universe popped into existence, sounds like creation. And then the universe is finely tuned, meaning, the laws of nature they're required to be at a certain, these various, constants and so on have to be like just right, or we wouldn't be here. And then you have to get life, and then you need human consciousness, and then you need this, and then you need that. And if you say, well, that's no proof, that's no evidence. Okay, what's a better explanation for how we got all this? The burden of proof is on you. Well, okay, then.
And this is, in my early videos, and I think this is what really bothered him. I pointed this out, that, the strength of the no-mo argument is that non-Muslims want to believe it. Okay, that is its number one strength. Its appeal. There is a demographic that does not want to believe that man ever existed, okay, for numerous reasons. That is its number one appeal. It's not the arguments, because the arguments are flimsy. They are weaker than the facts that we have as recorded by history. But why are people gravitating to it? And my point was, that's the exact reason why no Muslim's going to hear it, because the Muslim starts off on a different foot. They do believe in Muhammad. He's their prophet. They love him. Okay, they're not gravitating towards this argument by nature the way all these non-Muslims and especially Christians are. That's why I guarantee you there's probably so many no-mowers who don't even know the arguments. They've just heard some guy say Muhammad didn't exist, he has letters behind his name or whatever, and that's good enough for them. Okay, but guess what? That's not good enough for Muslims, and that's the only way this will even ever matter. In the meantime, it's nothing but a distraction. And you and I haven't even talked about how this has now become not just a distraction, how it's become an actual weapon against what we're trying to do, which is actually confront Islam, open eyes of Westerners and Muslims and so forth. And, to me now, these guys, these nomos are more dangerous than the worst Muslim troll and leftist troll I've ever dealt with, because they are a cult. So maybe we can address that a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna check out some of the comments from these guys. We have one more short video clip, and then we're gonna check out some of the comments from these guys. But yeah, I mean, just think about this, guys. So for almost 14 centuries, Islam is spreading and so on, and eventually gets stopped from like conquering the world and so on. And then we're told a little over 2 decades ago that just based on the math, Islam has taken over the world. They had the highest birth rate. Here's the, by 2050 or 2060, this is when it takes over France. This is when it takes over Germany. This is when it takes over the UK, just on birth rates and so on. And we're told, see, it's basically hopeless. And then right before it's just too late, we get handed all these sources. We get handed all their sources, and we get access to the internet, so that all these Muslims in all these different parts of the world who've been insulated from hearing what their sources actually say about their prophet all their lives, all of a sudden we get access to everyone with an internet connection. We can make a video responding to a Muslim argument, and it goes around the world instantly. We get everything we need to completely destroy Islam right now in our time. And then
the no-mowers want us to throw it away.
That's what I mean. We start sharing it, and all of a sudden, the apostasy rate shoots up from 0% to 26%. In 2 decades, Muslims are going around freaking out about what they call the avalanche of apostasy. They're the ones saying, if we don't do something about this right now, if we don't stop this right now, we'll never recover from this. And then right in the middle of all this, we get Jay Smith and the No Mores. Stop! What are you doing with all this nonsense? Just say Muhammad never existed. That's what. Let's pray. Let's pray. Thank you for Muhammad never existing. Thank you, Lord.
It's just unfathomable, man, when you really think about it.
It's really, 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 really weird. Ash here says, Mo is like those cringe guys that think they're saying something super badass and everyone else is cringing. Mo, I have the virility of 30 zoot inside me. Yeah, he was going around bragging about having the strength of 30 men. His followers thought he was saying something different, but he meant literally. Was the Quran written by heretic Unitarian types? Not sure what you're referring to here. You mean like the pre-Quran, like people like Jay and stuff will believe that there was the Quran before the Quran, that this was some Syriac thing or something like that? Yeah, I don't know. D. Wood, Raymond Ibrahim, have you considered teaching in schools?
I mean, I've been offered, but I'd rather just do what I do, which is teach online and through my books.
Yeah, and that was my plan back in the day. It was Muslims who derailed that. We actually had a Muslim who used to stand out in front of the school. I was teaching at Fordham. I was teaching philosophical ethics and philosophy of human nature. There's a Muslim who would stand out there, and eventually got to the point where like one of my students showed up and said, "Hey, there's a guy out there talking about you." It's like, and they had already been calling the school, but now you had a Muslim out actually standing out in front of there, and so it was okay. I cannot do both of these. I cannot teach philosophy at a university and be criticizing Islam. So either I have to back off Islam, which is what they wanted, and then just teach philosophy, or I have to burn that bridge and just say, okay, I spent my entire academic career studying to be a philosophy professor, but I can't do that. And so I said, okay, there are plenty of people who can teach philosophy. There aren't enough people blasting away at Islam, so I'm going to go blast away at Islam, and I'm not going to give them that power. I'm not going to give them that power over me. So I was willing to sacrifice my entire academic career and teaching career to blast away at Islam, and then it turns out I was just in it for the money the entire time.
Same here, I was at Georgetown working for a PhD at the Library of Congress, kind of being groomed. In 2007, I was on CNN, Fox News, NPR, all the leftist liberal things, but I started saying the truth, and it just, I already knew where it was going to go, and I was warned about it, and but whatever, ended up good for me.
Dr. Wood and Dr. Ibrahim, do you think in the future there will be a war between Islamic Jihad and Communist China? Who would win? With whom we ally? No, I don't think so. I think Islam's falling apart too rapidly. And I think China would crush them if they ever tried to mess with them. Yeah. Is that what you think?
Only the West has to fear from Islam, because only the West fights with kids' gloves. Every other civilization is not going to tolerate Islamic nonsense, and so Muslims don't bother with them. It's the bully mentality. They only push around the weak guy who gives in, which is the West.
Yeah, and so that's why you had all the situation putting Uyghur Muslims in camps and stuff, and they occasionally did a little protest outside of an embassy, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work with the Chinese. They don't fall for it. So we'll go complain about Islamophobia where it works.
Exactly.
All right, last little video clip we wanted to check out. This is Jay and Robert on the principle of embarrassment here.
So much of your book goes into that, and that's what I love about it. You do go through these references after reference of where they have sanitized Muhammad, where they have made him look, I would say, just like Jesus. They want what we already have.
Yeah.
They know that the world follows Jesus, and they know that why Jesus is so popular. In fact, I have said this, I just got done saying, I just done a debate with Raymond Ibrahim on this very thing, where Raymond Ibrahim has said, why would somebody write all these traditions that are so embarrassing? The Muhammad that's in them are so, and I'm saying, hold on a minute, Raymond. Your problem is you're looking at Muhammad through Christian eyes. You're looking at him, comparing him to Jesus. Muslims don't do that unless they're 21st century Muslims and Western Muslims. For Western Muslims, he is embarrassing, but not for a lot of Muslims I talk to. They love the Muhammad that's there.
The period of embarrassment is really the only coherent argument that people who still believe in Muhammad's historicity can adduce. But I think that it's exploded, if I do say so myself, in this book, in light of the fact that it's very clear that these stories were either fabricated or adapted from earlier sources about other people and folded into the Muhammad myth by people who weren't embarrassed by them at all, but who thought, these are practices we want to engage in, and so if we have our prophet engaging in them, then that's the best validation you can have for this activity.
All right, so that was their response to, and that is their standard response to us bringing up embarrassing material. Why would anyone make this up? Well, life was different back then, and this was considered good back then. And you say, okay, what's the records of this being prized and valued at that time and considered awesome? Well, you don't know that it wasn't. And so it becomes maybe there was a reason for making this up and we just don't have access to it. Okay, that again,
more
that would
conjecture.
Work. Yeah, that would work if it was one thing. When it's maybe this and maybe that and maybe this is why they thought semen all over your clothes was good, and maybe they thought it was good to bang your adopted son's wife, and maybe they thought this.
And I'm surprised he says that this is the most coherent argument. The most coherent argument is that Muhammad is widely attested to. And for you to say, no, we're not accepting that is basically for you to change the entire rule and say no one in history can be attested to anymore because I just don't like it. Okay. So I don't even think it's the strongest. It's my third argument, but I do think it's important and it's definitely one of the arsenal. But yeah, the only thing that you can say is possibly, moderns don't get, but I get, is basically the sort of, the tyrannical Muhammad. Okay. Yeah, that's true. Arabs in the 7th century wouldn't have a problem with an authoritarian, tyrannical, even cruel Muhammad. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about constant embarrassing scenarios that would have been just as embarrassing, if not more so, okay, then and problematic than they are today. And they just don't want to admit that, and they're trying to pretend that everything that's embarrassing is about Muhammad being this sort of cruel, authoritarian, sexual deviant. No, that's not it. There's a lot more. And the way that stuff comes out, the way we see it, is exactly how, like you were pointing out, the older it goes, the worse it gets. And you can see how, as time progresses, until it gets to Sahih Bukhari and so forth, it keeps getting sanitized. And it's just a realistic development than just, it's you just don't get it because you're a modern person.
Yeah. So we could grant, and I think we would grant, Robert and Jay's point to an extent that, there can be things that they weren't embarrassed back then, whereas Muslims are embarrassed about them now, like Muhammad and Aisha. So that doesn't seem to have been embarrassing to them back then. Yeah. It's embarrassing to Muslims now.
Pedophilia was not a problem.
Yeah. So I wouldn't use that as an example. I wouldn't use that to say, you see, this is something that someone wouldn't make up. There are other things where we know the satanic verses were embarrassing to them. We know that Muhammad and the story of Muhammad and Zainab, Muhammad taking the wife of his own adopted son and then having to come up with various justifications. We know that was embarrassing to them.
And banning adoption.
Yeah. We know that we know these things were embarrassing to them. So again, it's if you wanted to come up, maybe there was a reason for some person to make up the story about the satanic verses and multiple different versions of it and make up the entire history of this and put all these different sources and trace them back to all these different guys. Yeah, maybe. Why should I think for a second that is a better explanation than Muhammad delivered the satanic verses? Yeah.
Because I'm desperate to prove no moery. That's why.
That's it. All right. Want to check out some of these. So we got the responses, ladies and gentlemen. We got the responses from the no mowers, because you've got Raymond, and he's actually argued against the no mow position. Mary Harp has argued against the no mow position. I've argued against the no mow position, and we've got the no mowers have responded in various ways. So let's look at some examples here. Here we have the shocking truth is you are a loser, coward, get a life.
That's my video, which I recently made, again, responding to no mowery.
Okay.
So that's the extent of their argumentation.
That is the decisive refutation, if I've ever seen one. Yep. Let's check this out. Raymond Ibrahim has gone full pro-Muslim here with his belief in Muhammad. One more step towards his reversion to Islam, I think. Yeah, see, as soon as you start believing Muhammad existed, you're basically on a path to concluding that he's a true prophet.
You're going to become a jihadist. That's the next natural evolution of it. Yeah.
Next thing we're going to see Raymond arguing, screaming Allahu Akbar while blowing up a bunch of people in the name of
inevitable.
Allah.
Yeah.
That's what happens. That's what happens as soon as you start granting that Muhammad existed. All right, let's check out some of these comments, ladies and gentlemen. Raymond Ibrahim. Hey, Raymond, I'll just keep reading these, and anytime you want to comment, just let me know.
All right.
Because we have kind of endless comments here. Raymond Ibrahim, just due to be publicized, his name, but all his quoted reasoning is not on the truth, means his account of study is also a lie. Believing a standard Islamic narrative without a basis as per history.
Need I even respond to that gibberish?
Ha! Raymond Ibrahim admits defeat. He can't respond to this powerful.
I don't even know what it said.
Oh, yeah.
It makes me wonder, when I see this kind of written English, could this actually be Muslim trolls who've appropriated, logically so, the no-mo movement, and they're spearheading it because it's the best way to hide criticism against their prophet, which, of course, as I said, has always been the Achilles heel of Islam? Or is this just a dumb person who can't write? I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is, the no mowers sound kind of exactly like what a troll would sound like, and so very difficult to distinguish. But there's so many of these guys arguing exactly the same way. I'll kind of assume that it's a no mower until shown otherwise. Muslims fooled everyone with these stories of Muhammad. The name Muhammad did not exist in the beginning of Islam, nor did any of the writers of Muhammad know if he ever existed. Muslims had to redact verses back to force Muhammad into history. Raymond Ibrahim is like a Muslim that were brainwashed in a madrasa. Raymond Ibrahim trusts everything Muslims write down with zero historical evidence from Muslims from the 7th century. Muslims used Jesus to model Muhammad. The bad things about Muhammad was to throw people off from the truth and make him seem real.
What a way to think, man. I used to be sympathetic to, believing in some kind of conspiracies because surely everything isn't transparent. But this just takes it to such a level of, so delusional. Everything's a lie. Everything is false. And it's just whatever I want to believe. That's the reality of it. That's what reading that to me, that's what it sounds like. That's how that person thinks.
Yeah. And think about this. You have no historical. Well, you've got tons of historical sources. If you want to say, we don't have all the sources, the early sources that later sources are quoting and so on. That's fine. But they're quoting earlier sources. But think about this. Then he'll say, you just trust everything Muslims write down with zero historical evidence. But then he says, Muslims used Jesus to model Muhammad. So, okay, what's your sources on that?
Yeah, Jay Smith.
Yeah, Jay Smith said it. That's your source.
Yeah,
Trust Jay.
He's a historical source.
Yeah, we've heard trust me, bro.
He was there. He knows. Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard trust me, bro. Now we have trust Jay. Trust Jay, bro.
Just Jay, bro.
Yeah, trust Jay, bro. And that's amazing. But I mean, think about this. It's any evidence you quote, we're going to be super hyper skeptical of and reject it. And if Jay just makes something up, or another no more makes something up, it's indisputable. And the only reason you could even question it is if you're being paid by Qatar.
What else? Obviously.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff, guys. You guys are doing a bang up job here, no mowers. We have two of these. This guy is offering nothing sensible. It must be annoying for Jay. He's arguing dishonestly, very dishonestly. That's about you. Raymond is
so the guy who's presenting evidence is dishonest, and the guy who's just offering conjecture after conjecture is honest.
Mm-hmm. Raymond is no Christian. He's a secret Islamist arguing Momo lived. Okay, no probs, but trying to legitimize Mecca, and this is insane. So you
totally insane, dude. Yeah.
You're a secret Islamist.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, if you believe Muhammad existed as a historical figure, even if you say bad things about him or call him a false prophet, you are secretly a Muslim. Because Jay Smith said so. I mean, you already saw, he gave the prayer and he had his hypothetical debate with Jesus and Muhammad. So anyone who does what we're doing is clearly on the side of Islam.
Yep, gotta be. No other way of looking at things, ladies and gentlemen. Can't possibly be that Raymond actually believes, because we have a ton of historical sources and so on, and because we have all this embarrassing material that we can't think of
because
any
we have
real
common
reason.
sense.
Yeah. It can't be because of any of that. It's just we aren't persuaded by all the church fathers were referring to Jesus as Muhammad. We're not persuaded by that because none of them ever said it, and so shame on us, we're bad.
Yep.
Pray that Raymond may know Jesus. He appears to be a Christian by tradition and culture, but not born again. And we know this because, you didn't even accept Jay's prayer as authoritative liturgy. Yep. And then great debate. Jay won this debate. The Muhammad of Islam never existed. Jesus Christ is Lord.
You got to love the connection, I mean, there it goes again. It's that kind of cultic mentality. If you're going to believe in Jesus, you have to, as a corollary, believe Muhammad never existed. And if you believe Muhammad existed by corollary, you don't believe that Jesus is Lord. And that's what this comment right here is saying.
That's how it works. No, he did not. Islam is a pagan religion. You've got to love this. Did Muhammad exist? No, he did not. Islam is a pagan religion, as if Islam being a pagan religion means Muhammad didn't exist.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to reconcile the two clauses. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the Greeks and the Romans had a pagan religion. I guess Greeks and Romans didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Pagan religions don't exist. That's the lesson.
Yeah, pagans don't exist. Let's see. Raymond Ibrahim is embarrassing. Where does he get that nonsense from? The height of delusion on display here. Self-delusion is dangerous.
You got to love this stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. Raymond, if you proclaimed to be a Christian, which book is true about Hagar and Ishmael being out in the desert, dry sands?
Well, I don't even know what that's asking me.
I think it's saying... Yeah, I think, you have to try and figure out how they think, but it's pretty disturbing. But I think it's saying...
I'm okay.
Yeah, I think it's saying... if you claim to be a Christian, what are you going to believe? The Bible narrative or the Muslim story about Hagar and Ishmael, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. In Revelation chapter 12, Islam belongs to the devil. Where did the Christians go? Revelation 13:10, Mary, please do convert. Oh, now we're getting into stuff about Mary. Mary, you need to convert here.
You see, it's an article of faith now, all right? The no-mos, okay, the J followers who are Christians, it's become an article of faith. If you dare believe Muhammad existed, you have proven you are not a Christian, okay?
Yeah,
it's reached that level.
Yeah, Revelations says Islam belongs to the devil, so if you believe Muhammad existed, you belong to the devil, and so you need to convert. Apparently, it seems like what it's thinking. But again, hard to tell with these guys.
It's not only hard, it's kind of scary to try to enter into their brain and thinking patterns, to be honest with you.
Now we have a few comments that are directed towards Mary, because Mary made a video, ladies and gentlemen. She pointed out that Jay's argument about coins, which seems to be one of his main arguments, isn't nearly as strong as he makes it out to be, and he's leaving out a bunch of important details, like there were Christians back when this was happening, and they were bragging because the leaders couldn't take the cross off the coin because Christians would stop using it, and they still needed Christians to be using their money and so on. And so that doesn't, for some reason, doesn't make it into Jay's talks. He just presents it as, hey, there's crosses on these coins. There's no explanation of that other than these were Christians. And yet we know that Christians were bragging that the leaders wanted to take it off and couldn't because Christians wouldn't use it. And so, anyway.
By the way, when I was in college, I took a class with George Clive Foss. Okay, who he was a kind of a big deal in numismatics and Islam and so forth. And I distinctly remember him talking about how there's there's crosses on the Muslim coins because they appropriated the Byzantine coins, which had crosses, and often they would try to disfigure one of the arms of the cross, so it doesn't look like a cross. Okay, and two, I've heard Jay, if I understood it correctly, he's saying like it's the word Muhammad is on the coin because that's because that's Jesus, right? That's his claim. Or it could be that they're imprinting the name of their prophet on top of the cross because it's their form of saying Allahu Akbar, and we've triumphed. We've taken your gold, and now we're putting our stamp on it. So the coin argument, unless I'm not understanding correctly, just never really made any sense to me.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, even before Mary showed what was actually going on, which she did, I recommend her video. In fact, after this, if I forget, someone remind me to add the video to the description where she actually goes through and shows what happened when Uthman tried actually minting a coin and stuff, and just didn't take off. But even before any of that, just when it was the argument, I was just thinking like what? I mean, you think these guys coming out of the desert are obsessed with starting their own mint and stuff like that? I think they'd be more concerned with doing the conquering and stuff like that than they are with anyway. Exactly. But yeah, so I didn't find it terribly persuasive when I didn't actually know the details. And once you find out the rest of the story, seriously weak. Certainly not enough to establish that there's a better explanation for all the evidence. Let's see. That's the problem with religion. The books are inconsistent. David Wood has always been a Christian zealot and anti-Islam. It clouds his judgment. That's why I believe Muhammad existed. The interpretation you give is very compelling. Just don't consider Muhammad bashers to accept it. They have an interest in his existence. You catch it? Don't consider Muhammad bashers to accept it. The explanation. They have an interest in his existence. We need Muhammad. We need Muhammad's existence. That's what Jay's been telling everyone. Let's see. David Wood is afraid of losing followers to you and Jay, so he has to poison the well, in my opinion. I don't want to lose. Guys, on what?
There you go.
And I think this is on Mel's channel. Like, on what planet? I'm not being mean here, but on what planet is Mel going to get more followers than me? And I'm like, on what planet am I going to lose followers to Mel? Yeah, so not terribly worried about losing followers to Jay and Mel.
Mary just sent us an email of another comment. You want me to read it? It's a good one.
Oh, I got it. I was going to put it up after we go through.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
Yeah. Here we have it's because David is getting money from Israel. Well, I thought I was getting the Arab oil money. Which is it? Which one is it? Dang it! Please tell me. Now we have at the bottom, David Wood now gives vile characters a platform. He's showing his sinister side. Who's the vile characters? It's been Jai, DOC, Thaddeus, and Mary. Why? They're all my friends, and we do live streams regularly on various topics.
But they're vile because they believe Muhammad exists.
Yeah, and they're criticizing Jay's new cult, and they must be evil, and I'm giving a platform to them. And now even the worst of the worst, Raymond Ibrahim. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting seriously terrible.
Now you got the real Muslim on board.
Many years after reading Robert's book, Did Muhammad Exist?, I'd go on yearly church retreats with a Coptic brother. He hated what Islam did to Egypt, but he was so invested in the standard Islamic narrative. I have to point out, I'm the one who came up with SIN as abbreviation of standard Islamic narrative. And I made I made it as standard Islamic narrative about the about what Muslims think the Quran says about the previous scriptures. So I abbreviated the standard Islamic narrative, and then I contrasted it with my view, which is that Muhammad thought the previous scriptures confirmed him, so he had no problem confirming them because he thought that's what they said. And so I compared the two hypotheses. But Jay popularized it for this, interestingly.
Yeah, and I actually I commended him, and I was like, oh, that's a good acronym, by the way. And you didn't mention you came up with it.
Shocker,
He took the compliment.
Yeah, normally I don't even point it out because I steal people's stuff all the time, and I don't credit them.
Okay.
So I usually don't care when people steal my stuff. I think it's hilarious and awesome when I see people using something that I came up with. But how are you going to use it to trash me when I'm the one who came up with it? Anyway. But he was so
Let's
invested.
all officially acknowledge, however, that I have coined no mo and no moery.
Yeah, so I coined standard Islamic narrative, and I started calling this stuff a cult. No-mo.
Yes.
No-mo, which was brilliant. Now we have the cult of no-mo, and all these no-mos coming out of the closet in their cult. And that was Raymond Ibrahim. So let it be forever known, Raymond was behind the popularization of the Al-Zut story. That's when it took off, everyone.
Thank you.
And I would just say the Al-Zut story. My prediction is that just people knowing about Al-Zut, just that one story, will be more effective than Jay's entire approach will ever be.
Yeah. And that's why I did it. I was trying to show, if you look hard enough, you're going to find stuff that isn't embarrassing because we're modern and we don't get it.
Not hard enough in the Zut sense. I just want to clarify what you're saying. Right, go ahead.
I mean, just their name, Al-Zut. I mean, you got to love it.
It screams credibility, not like Muhammad screamed, but it screams credibility. Right. Yeah, so this guy says, many years ago, after reading Robert's book, Did Muhammad Exist? I'd go on a yearly retreats with a Coptic brother. He hated what Islam did to Egypt, but he was so invested in the standard Islamic narrative and in the existence of Muhammad, he'd get angry and arguing for it. I could never understand why it was important for him. Well, maybe because you had Muhammad who was the man behind so much devastation in Christian lands. And when some dope comes along and starts saying, oh, Muhammad never existed, it was actually Jesus. And then, Christians started doing it. And then it took, maybe you sound extremely disrespectful to all the people who are violently subjugated by this stuff.
And annoying.
Yeah. And let's see. They are unable to understand because they lack totally the love towards Jesus Christ. This is why we don't get it, guys. We lack the love towards Jesus Christ. Only our love to him towards our enemies and our neighbors and self initiates light in our soul. And this light of our souls is needed by our mind to recognize and discern what is said or written. Continue your good works. This is towards Mel, because you see the heart by Mel down there. Continue your good works while staying connected with our Savior and Redeemer. Only he can and will lead you into truth, as is written. So we don't love Jesus, and therefore we're not being guided into the truth, unlike Mel and Jay.
Right. If you listen to the Holy Spirit, it's going to always tell you Muhammad never existed. So we're not truly being guided.
Yeah, it's just weird how, God waited so long to share this, and then he used such terrible arguments.
He was waiting for Prophet Jay to come to be, to raise him up.
Yeah, and to tell us all these things about what the church fathers were saying, even though they were never saying it, and that Jews were saying this and Jews never said it.
That's immaterial. That's irrelevant.
Yeah. What's important is the story and your unquestioning obedience to anything Jay says, even if it's completely false and insane.
Right, because this is a cult.
Let's see. Mary Harp and her simping sidekick Thaddeus are utterly obnoxious characters. That's right, because they corrected Jay on the coins thing and actually gave more information, which would lead people to think it's not a good argument. And then,
heretics.
Yeah, a bunch of heretics. Is it just me, or does it seem that ever since Aisha, he's been... Oh, that's Muhammad Hijab's former hotel wife, as he called her. That's Muhammad Hijab's ex-wife, who has been talking to us about what she's gone through and some of the problems with the Muslim community and why they won't stand up to guys like this. She's actually done interviews with us. But this apparently plays a role in something about Thaddeus. Let me see this. Is it just me, or does it seem that ever since Aisha, he's been everywhere, lighting up every comment section like he's relevant? Embarrassing. And then Thad, this might be the response here. Oh no, this is not. This is a no-mower. He says Thad was fired from his job in Ohio earlier this year. D. Wood was told he could not enter the UK because of his felony record. Wood must have taken down a hill fall ever since. Like, what does me not going to the UK have to do with anything that's going on here? You could say that Thaddeus getting fired from his job, I mean, it's kind of obvious. Yeah, Thaddeus got fired for criticizing Islam several months ago. That's why he's been everywhere, as the second comment noticed. Is it just me, or does it seem that ever since Aisha, he's been everywhere? No, it's ever since he got fired, he's been everywhere, because now he has more time on his hands. I would take that as pretty obvious. And matter of fact, he said that in a video. Wow, I got fired from my job. Now I can do Christian apologetics and polemics against Islam full time. Interesting, but nope, it's something else. Those who use ad hominems in lieu of arguments are narcissistic attention seekers. Really? You mean like saying...
You mean like all these guys?
Yeah, you mean like saying we're just in it for money and we're getting paid by Jews, we're getting paid... The best way to deal with them is to ignore them completely. You could tell them you said the Kaddish for them, even though you're not Jewish. Attention is their oxygen. Remove it and they die. They'll just be left to posing tantrums that will eventually bore their followers. Losing followers is the worst kind of death for them. We don't want to lose followers, guys. And
talk about a bit of projection.
Yeah, if we don't stop Jay, we're just going to lose followers, and so that's why we resort to nothing but ad hominem attacks. This is insane. Yeah, talk about projection, man. Wow. People who love untruths about Islam, I guess that's us. People who love untruths about Islam will always feel gutted that their sacred cows are being slaughtered in the debates about Muhammad, the Quran, and Mecca. Carry on, Jay. You are an apostle of Christ and male too, even though you guys have already split and can't get along anymore because you're blaming each other for all the mistakes you guys made in your terrible arguments. Thanks for your painstaking research. You mean the research that he's already had to abandon and gaslighting everyone and saying that he abandoned it so long ago, even though it was July, and highly competent research dissemination. Wow.
Before we pass the ad hominem stuff, I have a little amusing anecdote for you from Jay Smith.
Oh, yeah?
When I first made my videos talking about him and responding to No Moery, and all I ever did is just mention his name like once, and very respectfully, because I tried to put a name to what this is, because everyone who would contact and attack me would say, you have to read Jay Smith. So I basically said, apparently Jay Smith is the one who's saying it. And I was like, I'm sure he has his reasons for believing what he believes, etc. But anyway, in one of his responses, he's him and Hatun, they say, well, who's Raymond Ibrahim? And they say, oh, he's a bodybuilder. And then Jay goes, oh, and he tells everyone, yeah, okay, put that under your wing. Okay, remember, first he's a bodybuilder, and then second he's and I'm also an Egyptian, and then finally I'm a critic of Islam. Okay, now that's not an ad hominem attack. The guy was basically saying that, okay, I'm just a big dumb muscle head, and so what do I really know? So there's your perfect example of ad hominem and how it was used.
Wild stuff. Yeah. So,
which, by the way, amused me to no end. I don't say this because it upset me. I say it because it was funny, but just to also show that you guys are accusing us of ad hominem, and here it was actually at the hands of your grand poopah.
Yeah. No, I remember articles from you way back, like 2007, 2008, 2009, in that range. That sounds
2005 was my first published article. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
20
remember.
years ago.
Yeah, so you're one of the OGs. So is Jay. You guys.
Thank you.
You guys are the OGs. It's just interesting that I was reading your stuff way back in the day, and then it was eventually someone's like, "Hey, check out this picture of Raymond Ibrahim." It was a picture from bodybuilding days, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like on a stage, right? You were on a stage at some point, right? Because I saw a picture of you on stage.
One or two of those leaked out. Yeah, I was an actual competitive bodybuilder, but literally over 30 years ago, when I won the Mr. LA when I was 19. I'm 52 now, so kind of moved on. I still lift weights, but I don't bodybuild.
Well, just know, everyone, the reason you can't trust Raymond Ibrahim is because his ultimate loyalty is to bodybuilding, and if he rejects the existence of Muhammad, that might interfere with his bodybuilding. He'd be laughed out of the gym or something like that. So that's a problem.
That's something a no mower would say.
Yep, got to be something like that, right? Yeah. Let's see. Oil money is strong. Yep. That's
Ooh.
if you want to explain things, guys, it's the oil money. And then we have, if I had $1 million, I'd divide it into 3 and give Mel and Dr. J each a third. If God is for Mel and J, who can be against them? Trust God to bring the increase.
Ooh, biblical language for Mel and J, right?
Yeah. If God is for Mel and J, who can be against them?
And how did we prove God is for them again?
Yeah, because
said so.
yeah, they got the awesome arguments about Jesus being Mahmad in Song of Solomon's, and all the church fathers.
Right.
They're all saying this, even though none of them did. But evidence, schmevidence. You just have to accept it and believe. And if you question it, you're evil. Everyone.
Yeah, you're just a blasphemer.
All right, let's see. It is sad how 4 personalities, with 2 out of them hiding their faces. He's talking about Jai and DOC. Hey. Do you know why Jai and DOC hide their faces? Because DOC, daughter of Christ, is an ex-Muslim, and her family, well, she lives in the UK, and she's got a family, and she hides her face. And so does Jai, her husband. They cover their faces. Why? Why might they do that if they're blasting away at Muhammad and the Quran, destroying every Muslim argument? They are my favorite 2 researchers on this stuff. Mary's another one of them. They are all awesome researchers. They are wreaking havoc on Dawah. Why might Jai and DOC hide their faces?
Because they don't believe that Muhammad didn't exist.
Yeah. So, just think about this. They're hiding their faces because Muslims would kill them. Why would Muslims? Because they are wreaking havoc on Islam. But I thought what we're doing is ineffective, and that we should all just be saying Muhammad didn't exist, and then we'd all be fine.
Saying it to Christians too, not Muslims.
Yeah, they're actually criticizing people who are putting their lives on the line and don't want to make it easy for Muslims to recognize them in the streets. Shame on Jai and DOC. It is sad how 4 personalities, with 2 out of them hiding their faces, attack 2 academics. I just have to point out, Jai and DOC posted their critiques, and they hide their faces, but they posted their critiques, and Jay instantly backed off, and then Mel started going, I never said that. And then Jay said, oh yeah, and then he gaslit everyone and said, oh yeah, we backed off that point. So what is this? The two people hiding their faces were correct. And so Ray, I really don't understand this. Jay Smith and Mel are these champion academics. Why should you listen to someone else? The other people were right and they were wrong. They were saying for years, they were saying things that are false, and they got corrected by 2 people hiding their faces. What are you saying? That the people who are hiding their faces, even though they were telling the truth and were correct, we shouldn't listen to them. Instead, we should listen to the people who were saying things that were demonstrably false and were exposed, and they had to reject them. You should still believe them anyway. Are you insane? You're
trying to unravel no-mo mentalities, man. Don't even bother. It's impossible. You're entering a realm of madness.
That's what I mean. And they object to us calling this a cult. You're a cult. You're saying we're loyal to particular people and we don't care about the truth, and we don't care if they can be exposed like demonstrably for what they're saying. We don't care about all that. Our loyalty is to Jay and Mel, even if they're saying
that's faith. That's faith. That's a cult.
That's a cult where Jay Smith, have more experience dealing with Islam than they are alive. Well, what's his excuse for getting so many things completely wrong? Not to mention R.A., who definitely needs to start eating salad. I don't know who this is.
Who's R.A.?
I don't know. And TMM, Too Many Marys, who gives Mother of God and my mother's bad name, acted more like Muslims on chat on debate than Christians. Yeah.
Maybe R.A. is me. R.I.
Yeah, I was thinking
salad and lose weight. Yeah.
I was thinking they might think it's Abraham, Raymond Ibrahim or something like that. But I mean, think about this. They act more like Muslims. Guys, what do Dawah guys do? They make up complete nonsense. The scientific miracles of the Quran, the perfect preservation of the Quran, and then they spread it, and then no one questions them, and they spread it around the world until it blows up in their face and gets exposed. Who's acting more like that?
Yeah.
I'd say Jay and Mel are definitely acting more like that. They're acting exactly like Dawa. And then what do Dawa guys say if you reject their argument? Oh, you're against the truth. It's like the Jews. They know the truth, but they reject it. That's exactly what these guys say.
That's the thing that, like I noticed with Jay, and I wanted to point it out, is what they do is they vacillate between, on the one hand, they try to act like we're objective scholars, and then when that fails, they fall back on faith and sort of pious religious talk. And they just go back and forth, whichever's going to, be able to stand up. And obviously they fall back to the Christian pious talk because their audience base is Christian. Okay. But it's like, you need to pick one paradigm. You can't just go back and forth, act like you're an objective scholar. And then when things get weak, you start appealing to, faith and prayers and so forth.
I've been informed that RA is not in fact you. It is Reasoned Answers. It's Thaddeus's channel is Reasoned Answers. So yeah,
okay.
I thought it was weird. Someone was going to tell you to start eating salads. Like, what are his muscles too big and he needs to cut back on protein or something like that? But they're talking about you, Thaddeus. So Thaddeus, start eating some salad, man. I don't know why Thaddeus isn't fat or anything. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so let's see. And too many Marys acted more like Muslims on chat on debate than Christians. Like two raptors kept on going and attacking other Christians. Pick one target, one attack, while you write answer, second one attack, meaning they don't even give you a chance to respond. Insult, lie, shameful behavior. All four got used only to Dawa drama, and now they are starting to create drama between Christians. Guys, are we the ones creating this drama?
Hey, I'm live and let live, man. If you want to believe Muhammad didn't exist, by all means do it. I've said that in my first video, but it's you guys, the nomos, who are just violent and just extra savage when someone objects and says, no, I do believe Muhammad existed. So, once again, they're projecting their own ways onto us.
Yeah, so think about this. I mean, I can spend years with Jay, and Jay telling people that the only reason people disagree with him is because of money or because they want clicks or it's just more popular or something like that. And he can say this, and he can sit there using arguments, some of which I regard as terrible, some of which I say, okay, he's got a point there. But others, some of the arguments I think are just terrible. And I can sit back for years and never utter a peep. And then eventually, when he's personally attacking my friends, I say, okay, he's trying to bully them into shutting their mouths. I'll go ahead and have this on my channel. Then we're looking for drama. We're looking for drama and trying to cause division between Christians. Not this cult that can't shut up. Not this cult that anytime we're having a discussion with Muslims, showing them that they've been lied to about their prophet and that he's a horrible degenerate and we can prove it. These guys come in. No, you're arguing wrong. You have to just listen to Jay Smith and just say Muhammad didn't exist.
Go pray. Muhammad never existed. Pray about it.
Yes. Jay said it in his prayer, and his prayers are. What is this? Anyway, stick with Dawa. I am a Catholic. Don't know what denomination. Mel. Jay is Protestant, and we're all working together here. Yeah, Jay and Mel just scream working together. Guess what? They're not working together anymore already. Just think about this, everyone. Matter of fact, let me put myself back on the screen because I want people. This is an important point. This is seriously important. I'm Catholic. Don't know what denomination Mel is. Jay is Protestant, and we are all working together here. No drama, no crap. That four want division. Jai and DOC should stick with one shtick, and that is to translate Arabic. Actually, I only got one more slide, so let's go ahead and get this. I think some apologists just hungry for views. I see new short response from Jai and DOC for this video. They clearly only want to chase Jay mistake and not interested with the argument itself. Jay and Mel, in other hand, bring all objection, answer it in 2 hours, bring the data and admit that they make some mistake and clarify it. Keep it up, Jay, Mel, and team. Don't be distracted by some narcissistic apologist, now, if you disagree with them, you're just a clear narcissist.
Yet another projection.
Yeah, I just want to point this out. And guys, if you don't pay attention to anything I said for this entire live stream. Pay attention to this part. Pay attention to this part, because this is serious stuff here. Jay's been saying this stuff for years. He's been getting fed this stuff by Mel. And wherever Jay goes, it'll be an entire audience of Christians, and they'll eat it all up and be giving standing ovations and stuff like that. Meanwhile, a bunch of what he was saying was complete, made-up nonsense. It never crossed people's minds to actually look up what he's saying. They just believed it, right? And eventually, Jai and DOC look up something that he was saying, right? Mahmud is, all the church fathers were talking about Mahmud as a title for Jesus, and everyone is using this, and it was so common and so on. That's where you get the word Mahmud. It was a title for Jesus. They look that up and say, this is completely wrong. There's no church father who called Jesus that. No one was using that. Where are you getting this from, right? But they said it much more politely than I just did. And then Jay's going around, and even the Jews, they used Mahmud. Mahmud ben Uziel. Mahmud ben David. Mahmud. They're all using Mahmud. Jai and DOC, look it up. There's no one who uses this. No one. Where are you getting this from? Again, much nicer than I just said it. Jay, oh yeah, we stopped using that years ago. No, you were using it last month. So what's going on here? And then, yeah, we backed off this because the sources just don't say this stuff. And then Mel tries to defend the Song of Solomon stuff. It doesn't work at all. And then he has to say, I never said this, I never said that, I never said this, I never said that. Then they have to split. Okay. What happened? Why was there this huge fallout and these guys, and it blows up in their faces, and then they have to throw each other under the bus? Because something they said was exposed. Now, what I'm hearing from all the Nomo fans is we should never respond to these things. We're evil if we respond to these things. So what we should have done is let these complete made up things circulate until they became dominant. We should just throw away all the old ways of doing things, just exposing Muhammad. We should abandon all that and just say Muhammad didn't exist. We should all be doing that. We should be using Jay and Mel's arguments. That's what we should be doing. If we did that, and we didn't respond to it, we didn't correct it because we don't want to cause division. We don't want to cause division, right? So we don't want to respond to people who are saying completely false things. We don't want to do that. So we'll just let these things slide. We'll let these things slide.
Let the Muslims catch it and embarrass them even worse.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be this little fallout. And I don't know the details behind the fallout. This is just kind of what I've been hearing. I know that I've seen Mel throwing Jay under the bus. I never saw that. And then someone said that Mel's they're no longer working together. Something. I don't know the details, so you can correct me on any of that. But think about this. You're saying instead of nipping it in the bud, where if something gets exposed, it's a guy who said it, and the guy has been shown that he needs to correct what he's doing. You're saying we should wait until millions and millions and millions of Christians are all using this and then let it blow up in the faces, when it will discredit the entire Christian community, discredit all of Christian apologetics, discredit all of Christian polemics. And it shows that none of us are looking into this, and none of us will call this stuff out, even if we know it's false. That's what you're saying real good Christians would do? We just let this snowball until it's all of Christian apologetics, and this is our main polemic. Muhammad never existed. How do we know? Because Mahmud is Jesus and Song of Solomon. And it would just blow up in all our faces, and all of Christian apologetics and evangelism and polemics has been discredited. That's what we should wait for, instead of saying, Jay, you said this, it's wrong, stop saying it. I mean, you'd really have the fallout not just be between Jay and Mel, but like why would you want to do that? Why? Why wouldn't you want to correct it when it's just a person saying something wrong? Why would you want to let it spread to millions of people so that everyone gets embarrassed? Why? I do not understand, but I regard that as a serious, serious problem for all you nomos who are saying, how dare you respond to this? You guys are weird, man. Weird. Oh boy. Oh, there was just one more thing that Mary sent over. Let's see. What's this? Let's see. This is from Psychedelic Elvis, who says, Muhammad of the 7th century is not the Muhammad of modern Islam. Muhammad of modern Islam is a straw man construct by Jesuit Catholic Freemasons to use as a proxy to subdue the world's nations.
They got it. This guy figured it all out.
We got us. The case cracker.
Yeah, genius.
Yeah, Raymond, I'm gonna go through super chats and stuff, but you've been on for several hours, and I'm used to going a long time. So if you want to share any final thoughts and stuff like that, and then I'll go through the super chats.
Yeah, no, I think the main point, which you and I both agree with, is this no-mo business, as far as I'm concerned, has always been fine, if you want to believe that. But it's really spilling over, and it's becoming just very damaging and very negative, and it's just not even being used for its original purpose as a polemic against Islam. I've already said, I even told Jay, you know what, my belief is it's a weak polemic, but by all means, you and whoever wants to take it to Muslims should take it. I would respect that. I would support that. At least it's being directed where it belongs. But apparently, because no Muslim wants to hear it or cares or is at all affected by it, and because the no-mowers and the purveyors of it don't want to just put it to bed, and I get it, I understand, because they've spent so much time on it, they actually found people in a demographic that wants to give it some ear, which happens to be Christians. So they've gone there, and they're welcomed, and it's growing into sort of cult, and yet it's not doing what it was originally made to do, which is to actually try to undermine Islam, because it's being shared only amongst non-Muslims, specifically Christians. And all that really does is, all it really does is undermine things, because when you believe Muhammad didn't exist, guess what? You're not going to take him seriously. You're not going to want to learn about his life. You're not going to understand how Muslims learn through his pattern, the continuities from his lifetime all the way until our time. All this is important stuff, So you actually become intellectually disarmed, and you throw away, like we were saying, you throw away all the tools that non-Muslims have against Islam. And then on top of it all, it's bad enough you've done that to yourself. Then your number one mission is go around yelling at other Christians about how they also have to stop believing in Muhammad, because somehow that's going to make Islam go away, because we're all going to stop believing in Muhammad and pray, and then that's it. Islam's going to die. So my point is, I wish it had some, when you share it with non-Muslims, it does nothing but actually create mischief, in my opinion. And I'm putting it mildly. Okay. So if anyone wants to use it as what it was intended for, as a polemic against Islam, but just, using it and amongst the demographic that wants to hear this, which is non-Muslims and Christians, and then thinking you won and exploiting that demographic because, now you're validated. You're really not thinking about the repercussions of what this is really doing. It's doing the exact opposite of what it would do if you share it with Muslims. You share it with Muslims, possibly it could have some beneficial impact on Islam. But when you share it with non-Muslims, it's the exact opposite. It creates confusion, it creates discord, and it creates intellectual disarmament, because you now jettison and throw away all of our original tools against Islam. That is to say, as I called it, Islam's Achilles heel, Muhammad and his life. And I'll end it there. Thanks for the opportunity, David, and I'll see you all later.
All right. Go continue defending the existence of Muhammad and getting really, really well paid for that.
Yeah, as I always do. All right. Take care.
Right. Thanks, brother. Catch you next time.
Sure. Yep. Bye.
All right, everyone. So yeah, my sort of final thoughts on that, and we'll go through the super chats. Is if you wanna run the non-existence of Muhammad as a polemic, you've never heard me complain about that. You've only heard me support the idea of doing that. Just don't combine your idea that you have this great polemic. Don't combine that with anyone who disagrees with you must be getting paid, or anyone who disagrees with you must just be in it for attention, or anyone who disagrees with you must be in it for this or that or something like that. Because then you are setting up your followers, whatever your intentions are. Your followers are going to regard the people who disagree with you as evil. And if you're intending that, then you have then you're basically becoming a cult leader intentionally. And if you don't intend that, well, you're not realizing what you're actually doing. But you will be causing massive division, because this won't be, hey, these other people disagree with me because we just disagree about the conclusions on the evidence. It's they disagree with me because they're evil. And that is what we do not need in apologetics and polemics. And all you no-mowers, you no-mo cult, You can cry me a river all day long if you don't like me saying that. Keep running your mouths, because this stuff is not easy to. I mean, this is not difficult to expose what you guys are doing. And just think about it. If you guys hadn't been running your mouth, we might not even be responding to Jay right now. There might not even be the Jay and Mel throwing each other under the bus and stuff. It might not be any of that right now. If you guys hadn't come over and kept running your mouths, no, here's how you have to do it. This is the only way to do it. Islam's biggest weakness by far is the embarrassing life of Muhammad. To say, oh, thanks, we don't have to deal with that anymore. We could just say Muhammad didn't exist. We've had the avalanche of apostasy. Here we are right in the middle of the avalanche of apostasy. Dawah is crumbling. It's difficult to find a Muslim willing to defend Muhammad anywhere on the planet. It is difficult to find a Muslim willing to actually engage on information about Muhammad. We're told we need to abandon all that and just start arguing that Muhammad never existed. And Jay's theory is Muslims are so scared of this material. They're so terrified of people arguing that Muhammad didn't exist. That's why they don't bother to engage with it. There's a kind of little, there's a little kernel of truth in that Muslims will try to avoid responding to something as long as they can. But when they eventually recognize something as a threat to the belief of Muslims, they do respond. Look at the Islamic dilemma this year. They tried to ignore it. Once they actually saw it, like the confidence of Muslims was being shaken by this argument, then they started trying to respond. And now you can go look at all these guys. All these guys have videos on their channels trying to respond to the Islamic dilemma. Why? Their followers are in panic mode, going to their dawah leaders going, we have no idea how to respond to this. And these guys are trying to respond. How many of these guys are responding to the existence of Muhammad? Are any of them responding to it? I haven't seen it. Why? Because their followers aren't coming to them saying, we've got a problem here. We don't know how to answer it. They're not. They don't care. So you've got the dawah leaders, they don't care. You've got all the dawah fans, they don't care. You've got all the Muslims, they don't care. You got 2 billion Muslims in the world. They don't feel threatened by this argument, so they're ignoring it. So what are the leaders of the no-mo cult doing? They're just going to Christians and saying, Christians, this is how you have to argue. Christians, you need to believe this. And Christians are cheering for them. Wow, what a powerful argument. And then they're going around to who? They're running around to other Christians. How dare you use any other argument other than this one that Muslims don't consider a threat to their faith at all? How dare you? How dare you focus on what is ripping dawah apart at the seams and is completely crushing it and sending them running? How dare you take the approach that is completely obliterating Islam and causing the avalanche of apostasy? How dare you take that approach and not this other one, which doesn't seem to work at all except for causing division among Christians? That's what I'm hearing. Weird stuff. And you're a cult. All right. Let's take these super chats, ladies and gentlemen. From Steve. Advice for someone from Toledo dealing with dawah. Kind of depends on if it's like just random encounters, or if it's online, or if it's at the dawah booth, or if it's like a friend. But if it's a situation where you know you're going to be encountering the dawah over and over again, and you can actually examine arguments and get back to people and so on. I have a video. If one of the mods wants to share it in the chat, you have to look it up. But the video is called "How to Share Unpleasant Facts with Pleasant Muslims." And even though it's called that, and it's kind of made for having a discussion with like a Muslim friend that you don't want to, deliberately provoke or offend. How do you get all the same information across? But works perfectly for dawah booths and so on. I would say learn the Islamic dilemma really well. Check out our videos on the topic. Learn that really well. That's pretty valuable for every situation. But yeah, check out that video. Got good stuff in it. My advice would be there. Do they explain who's in the Prophet's mosque in Medina? I don't know about its history. I mean, so supposedly Muhammad is buried in the mosque in Medina. How would they explain that? I would guess they just say it's not Muhammad, and that's a later fabrication, and we don't know who's in there. I mean, following Jay, no, this is Jesus. Jesus is buried in there, since everything goes back to Jesus, apparently. So what I'm hearing you say, you are doing this for the money. So here you go. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph, for giving me the money. This encourages me to continue defending the existence of Muhammad. Without everyone's donations, I'd be forced to conclude that Muhammad didn't exist, because, Song of Solomon, guys. Don't know Jay, but the ear seems apt from this. Yeah, and not just him. I mean, the people who are listening as well. And it's something easy. It's something easy to do, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to completely. I don't want to attack the listeners and say, "Hey, you guys are so stupid." You tend to trust people, and if it's one of the OGs, you've been hearing about Jay Smith for so many years, you would think you can trust it. And he says it with such confidence. You think, "Hey, this information is good as gold." So pretty natural to think you're getting reliable information. Now you've seen most charitable interpretation is that Jay is extremely sloppy with some of his arguments. And he sounds really confident in things he should have no confidence in because they're false. They're not true. So that would mean you can still listen to Jay, but you need to check everything he says. You need to look it up, like critically. My Exilarch ancestors beg to differ, Jay. Hey, it's Mahmed Ben Ashmaze here. I may not be a smart man, but I know enough not to confuse Muslims with even more convoluted information. Yeah, I mean, it is hard enough to get them to understand. Your prophet had sex with his adopted son's wife after he caused the divorce by lusting after her. And then look at these completely idiotic defenses of this that we find in the Muslim sources. How can you believe in that guy? Takes a lot of time for them to get that. So what do you? Oh, but the Exilarchs, blah blah. Okay, yeah, that's going to be powerful. And it just sucks. But a lot of the listeners you're targeting with information are the product of 40 generations of first cousin marriage. I don't think it's going to work. The Dome of the Rock claim must be false. Mahmud can't be a title. Arabic titles have definite article al first, right? This Mahmud is a name or proper noun. Yeah, we'd have to get some feedback from Jai and DOC on that. But the argument is that inside the Dome of the Rock, you have a mention of Allah and Muhammad and then a bunch of stuff about Jesus. And so the claim is that Mahmud is actually Jesus. It requires a ton of speculation, but whether it's actually ruled out as a title because of the Arabic, I'd have to consult someone more knowledgeable than I. Exilarch Time of Mo, Exilarch Time of Mo named Mar Zutra III. No joke. Zutra. For Raymond Ibrahim. Oh, sorry. I didn't want to keep Raymond here because, I don't know how late he stays up. And we'd already been going 3 hours. For Raymond Ibrahim, to what degree do the Islamic sources distort aspects of Momo's story, i.e. places, deeds? Well, that would actually be up for debate because the Muslim sources are actually contradictory on a lot of stuff. So it's basically, guys, we know for a fact stories were being made up, things were being embellished. We know that later leaders and stuff, if you had a political position later on, you'd have someone write a hadith for you and so on. So plenty of room for skepticism and stuff. We know there's embellishment. We know they're changing things. We know all that. That doesn't mean that the best explanation for the evidence is that Muhammad didn't exist. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll be going through that in the future because you have issues like the Petra Mecca thing and so on that we'll be taking a closer look at, since apparently the nomos are not going to stay away from this. They're going to insist that we have to agree with them no matter what. So I'm sure we'll be revisiting all kinds of issues. In that debate versus you, Jay said we should not do this. I will get threats for this. No one touches Muhammad. Then 5 or so minutes later, Jay said that he no longer gets threats. Traveling, they can't use David, Sam, Hatun, or Raymond's work for safety. They ask for Jay's work. Thaddeus caught it, caught it too in YouTube comments. So apparently, I haven't seen this, but so apparently Jay said that the truth about Muhammad not existing is going to get them in trouble. And then he turned around and said, hey, he doesn't get threats since he's been arguing this. And so it's much safer to argue Muhammad didn't exist than to argue the way we do, blasting away at Muhammad. And so it's a superior approach. So yeah, that would be, I haven't seen it, but that would be an interesting contradiction. And it would sound like someone who's just making things up as he's going along. This situation is unfortunate, makes me question everything I've watched from Jay Smith before, including everything he does, Sierra International. That's kind of the issue. And that's why, and this would be the important takeaway for Jay. And I don't know if he's going to watch this entire long live stream, but if you get a chance to talk to Jay, this would be important. When you say everything with the same level of confidence, even if you're saying something that's completely made up, like Jesus was called Mahmad, even if you're, I mean, if you say that with the same level of confidence, then when someone eventually looks up something and it's not there, it's all made up, that calls into question everything else you've said. Calls into question everything else you've said. And that's why when this sort of thing happens, you have to stop it with one or two people, and one of the two people who are spreading this, and not let it become the dominant position. Then it just blows up in everyone's faces, and then everyone, all of Christian apologetics is called into question. Because keep in mind, guys, this is exactly what happened in Dawa. It's exactly what happened in Dawa, right? Someone at some point I don't even know who, someone at some point made up a lie, a flat out lie about perfect preservation of the Quran, right down to the dot, right down to the letter. Then that spreads for decades. For decades, that complete lie spreads. Tons of Muslims believe the lie. Hundreds of millions of Muslims believed the lie. The leaders didn't call them out because this is becoming like super important to people's faith. This is a miracle of Islam. This supports our religion. You call it out, you're threatening their faith in Islam. So the leaders just kept quiet about it, even though it was a lie, and they knew it was a lie. Talking about the actual people who know the history of the Quran. They knew this was a lie, and they let it spread anyway, because they didn't want to be the ones who shake the faith of Muslims. What happens? Well, the truth eventually comes out. And it's not just the people who are spreading the lie. Even the people who are keeping their mouths closed, they're all complicit. It's like, okay, there are the people who are actually lying, and there are the people who wouldn't speak out against the lie. We don't trust any of you guys anymore. Do not tell us anything about your religion. We don't trust you. You're liars, or you're people who allow lies to spread. But we don't trust any of you guys anymore. Is that where we're supposed to make Christian apologetics like that? Christian polemics? Bad idea. Bad idea. Trust is important, guys. Trust is important. And that means you need to be careful in what you share. Alan says, thank you, Raymond, for exposing the Al-Zut story. Yes, he deserves the credit for that. David Wood on Mark Gagnon's podcast would slap. Don't know who that is, but so I don't know if it would slap or not. Boom! Raymond said Muhammad was the Achilles heel of Islam. Achilles never existed. Checkmate. Yes, that's powerful. Would not surprise me for Mel to be using that as a response. Nate Sala, debate masterclass, learned Aristotle, debate rhetoric. We can have ethos, logos, and pathos. Jay used only pathos. Yeah, I haven't seen Jay's recent stuff, so I wouldn't know. I've seen the clips that we've covered in live streams. Stop trying to shut him down, David. Gosh darn you. Yes, I apologize for constantly trying to shut down Jay. You gosh darn heckler. I know, shame on me. David, you heckler. I apologize. I said I take it back, man. I'll stop trying to shut Jay down by responding to his cult. Looked into Islam in Portugal. I'm from the Azores archipelago, but still a Portuguese Christian and heartbroken. We should be united in concern, not divided by no mo, yes mo, irrelevant. Well, we're not the ones who decided to cause division over this, Anna. We're the ones who are responding to some dangerous stuff and some complete made up stuff spreading. So we ultimately have to protect. We are here to guard the truth, and it is not a good idea to let complete misinformation spread around the world. It becomes way more difficult to respond to after it spreads than it is to catch it at the beginning. And we're already in that situation. You can already expose stuff, and the very next day, people will be using it against me in the chat. And we can expose it again, and then the very next day, people are using the same stuff. That's what happens, because guess what? If something spreads to 5 million people, and then you do a live stream responding to it, and several thousand people watch it, guess what? You're still dealing with a ton of people who don't know the refutation. It gets very hard to respond to when it spreads. And so, got to respond now. This is Jay's work for over 10 years. It's hard to spend so much time to just then say it was a waste over 10 years of my life for nothing. That's true. And if I were like Jay and I wanted to ascribe diabolical motives to anyone who disagreed with me, I'd say, yes, Jay has a terrible argument. And it's based on a bunch of nonsense, but he can't back off now because he's got 10 years invested in it. But I wouldn't say that. I'm assuming that he actually believes this stuff. You wonder why he has to use complete made-up nonsense to defend it if he thinks it's true. Yeah, ding, dadden, bing, bong, flipper. Oh, yeah, that's still Giovanni making fun of me, attacking me for criticizing Jay. You and Rob were cordial, respectful, and friendly equals exemplary. Robert Spencer? Yeah. No, again, Robert doesn't argue like this. I mean, he'll argue that Muhammad didn't exist, but he doesn't like, oh, you disagree with me, so you're actually doing it because you're getting paid by Jews or something like that. Daughter of the Most High says, maybe the no-mo narrative people are so willing to believe is because it's easier not to work to refute Islam. They can say, he didn't exist. Why should I answer any questions about him? What do you think? That might, at a psychological level, it might just be, no, I think it's more along the lines of like, again, it's like the reason conspiracy theories are appealing to people. It's you've got this special knowledge and other people don't. Something about that feels good to people. But also possible it does come across as, hey, you don't need to learn all this stuff and learn all these Muslim sources, and you could just say Muhammad didn't exist, and you can just sit back and play skeptic, right? That would be a parallel. I brought up a parallel earlier, but a parallel with like the new atheism, right? Did the average new atheist go out and study cosmology and fine-tuning and the origin of life and the history of Jesus? No, they were trained to just sit back and say, burden of proof is on you. I'm going to play skeptic. That's no proof. That's no proof. Oh, you're arguing this? That's no proof. Oh, that's not enough to persuade me. Again, which any idiot can be taught to do that. But guess what? That's part of why it's appealing. It's fun playing skeptic. It's fun playing skeptic and saying, prove this to me. Prove it to me. Prove what you're saying to me. But I'm not going to believe anything you say. It's easy and anyone can do it. And it's fun. So not surprising that that becomes popular. New Hadith. Once the young boy Mo went to the market with his buddy Didgu. The merchant accused them of theft and asked who was the mastermind. Mo threw his buddy under the caravan. It was Digu's. Oh, Digu's. I get it. I get it. Should use a J there. Obviously, both these guys have been bought by the shame industrial complex, pushing the principle of embarrassment drug onto the population. That's true. But I don't know why you're exposing us for that. Thank you, David. David, thank you for all you do. Yep, that's what I'm here for. Separate from the question of religion, Raymond, what are your opinions relating to indigenous rights of Jews, Copts, Assyrians under Arab colonialism? Well, he's not here anymore. I'll have to send him that comment or read his books. I'm glad this J. Smith thing happened. People need to see that we as Christians won't hesitate to check those who, alongside us, seek to polemicize against Islam. Yeah, and this is because I get tons of comments. Why are you guys causing division? Why can't this just end? Why can't you end all the infighting? No, sometimes you have to take your stand against people who are spreading complete nonsense. And they're like, but look, the Dawa guys are going to love this. The Dawa guys are going to love the division. They're going to think. Just think realistically here. The Dawa guys are going to love the division and the arguments among Christians. They're going to love that. What do you think they'd love more? That some people were arguing something and other Christians called them out for the misrepresentation and deception? You think they're going to love that? Or do you think they'd rather love Jay Smith spreads a bunch of completely bogus arguments around and all Christians mindlessly accept them and no one ever responds to it until Muslims eventually expose everything as a lie? And then no Christians spoke out against it. Which do you think they'd love more? Exposing all Christian apologetics and polemics as deceptive? Or, yeah, someone argued something and Christians instantly, unlike the Dawah guys, Christians called him out for it and exposed the misrepresentation and deception. So yeah, guess what? Someone spreads a bunch of nonsense. You're just in a bad situation where there are going to be some consequences of that. Decide which consequences you want, like just completely destroy the credibility of Christians, or one guy or a couple guys have to answer for some things, but other people are calling them out. I would much rather have the second one, because that's why we're different from Dawah guys. Hi guys, appreciate what you're doing. Any thoughts on UK about civil war in Islam and recent pushback? No, I've been saying for years, David, is Islam going to take over the UK? No, I don't believe it's going to take over the UK. I don't believe it's going to take over Germany. I don't think it's going to take over France. I think eventually Islam will push enough buttons that people actually rise up against it. The point is, the longer that's put off dealing with Islam, keep in mind, you could have dealt with Islam completely peacefully. You can deal with it almost completely peacefully right now. I mean, think if everyone in Europe started blasting away at Muhammad and exposing Muhammad, and everywhere you go, you find out about more embarrassing stuff about Muhammad, what Muslims are going to want to move there? Hey, I want to take my family, move to a place where we're going to be bombarded day and night about embarrassing material about Muhammad. And a lot of the problems will be dealt with there. You still have other things you have to deal with, and then you'll have more and more people leaving Islam, and Muslims are going to recognize this place is toxic for Islam. Instead, it's an Islamic paradise. We can go around banging people's 12-year-old little girls and stuff like this, and no one will even stop us. We can go around spouting complete idiotic nonsense everywhere we go. No one stops us. So it's a paradise to them. It's the greatest place on earth to them. We can go there, say and do whatever we want, and no one calls us on it. Imagine if it was different, where one, you don't get away with any of this stuff. You don't get away with it, and people are just constantly blasting away at your prophet. Would make it a pretty toxic environment for Muslims. So that could happen anytime, and again, it's totally peaceful. But anyway, the point is, as far as the civil war, yeah, the more you push this off to the next generation, the bloodier it's going to get. Because you're going to get to a point where, you can get to a point where you're not going to go around criticizing Muhammad because people will kill you for it, right? And so it becomes increasingly more dangerous the longer you put it off. But I think it will, regardless. I think people will eventually respond. It's just, you got people like me who are trying to deal with it peacefully while you can, and then somehow the good people are the ones who want to put it off until it becomes a bloodbath. The people want the bloodbath, they're the good guys, and people want to deal with it peacefully, we're the bad guys. Lebanese pastor here. Good work, guys. The Bible prophesied many antichrists denying the Son. A historical Muhammad matches that. Yeah, Muhammad is the actual perfect fulfillment of biblical prophecies about false prophets, right? So we're told, Jesus said, beware false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Muhammad is a perfect example of that. Muhammad came out, Jews, Christians, I'm on your side. Yeah, we're going to work together. We're all going to get along, and we're going to be against the polytheists. A few years later, you all have to be subjugated. Sheep's clothing, ravening wolf. And then you have, what is a false prophet's ultimate goal? What's he here for? Lead people away from the gospel. What's the gospel? Well, it includes three really important elements. Jesus died on the cross for sins, rose from the dead, and he's Lord. What does Islam deny? They grant all kinds of other things. Jesus is the Word of God. He's born of a virgin. He's the Messiah. He performed all these miracles. They're granting all these other things. What do they deny? The three core elements of the gospel. Is that a coincidence? No. You should be looking at that going, you are the most obvious false prophet in history, buddy. So it seems to fit really, really well with a false prophet. But it's easier to believe that he didn't exist, apparently. Have you heard of the Druze historian scholar Suleiman Bashir? He published works about the early history of Islam that were banned in some Muslim countries. I was close with a member of his family. Nope, not familiar with him. And that's actually interesting. I didn't know Druze. I didn't know Druze were kind of. I mean, it would make sense kind of where they are, but they've also had to kind of get along. So it kind of makes sense that. It kind of makes sense that Druze wouldn't be very polemical against Islam because they're in areas where that could be very dangerous. But no, I didn't know that there were Druze writing about that. Imagine if nomos were tasked with the burden of proof for Father Abraham versus Mo is the dirtiest false prophet that ever existed. How much evidence for Abraham is there? And yeah, that's what Raymond was pointing out, that if you want to take this methodology and use it and go tell Muslims, hey, here's how we're rejecting the existence of your prophet. You got to be consistent. You got to be consistent and let them apply that methodology as well. Giovanni said, donate to Thad, y'all. Oh, yeah, guys, Thaddeus did lose his job for criticizing Islam. So his channel, Reasoned Answers, good channel to support. There you go. Check that out. D. Wood's track record speaks for itself. Say what you will. Yes, it shows that I'm just doing this for money. Is Raymond's favorite shirt color blue? If so, why? Certainly seems like it. I think we have to attack this evil ideology from all angles. Yeah, that's why we've never had a problem with people arguing Muhammad didn't exist. We just have to make sure we've crossed T's and dotted I's. Otherwise, the Muslims will be punching holes in our narratives, not just in the al-Zut sense. It's good you included that, not just in the al-Zut sense. But yeah, I'm all for attacking Islam from all angles. Just one, don't be using your approach to attack everyone else's approach and say everyone else is wrong. And make sure you're not giving bad arguments. Don't make stuff up. And if someone else makes something up, don't spread that nonsense. It's pretty low bar to set, right? Don't make stuff up and don't be attacking everyone else and saying everyone has to agree with you. But the nomos can't even accept that. Raymond's ripped, but not as much as AP's Quran. I thought you were about to say not. I thought you were about to say something else. I thought you were say Raymond's ripped, but not as much as Muhammad on the night of al-Zut. Both those work though. Both those work. I can't believe when people poke at Jai and DOC for that. Yeah, I know. Are you serious? You're going to attack Jai and DOC for covering their faces in the UK when they are on the front lines of wrecking Islam? I spoke with Jay this past Sunday. His researcher, Mel, quit on Sunday. Also, Jay contradicts himself continually. He uses Early Islam by Karl-Heinz Oleg as his source for his arguments. Yeah, the stuff about Mahmud and I think about the coins. I think that's where Jay's. That's Jay's source apparently. And I'm gonna check that stuff out. Because I want to know basically. Like when I hear people using the arguments, it sounds terrible, but I don't know if if they missed something or they're presenting the argument poorly or they're misrepresenting the argument. So I actually want to check it out and see, what did he argue? In other words, is the source, is Karl Oleg's book, is that actually bad? Does that contain terrible argumentation? Or does he contain good argumentation? Other people just screwed it up when they were presenting it. So we'll check that out. You know how Muslims what? What are you talking about? And you know how Satan is represented by a goat? Yeah, coincidence? What's wrong with you, man? This is Islamophobic. David, I love your show. So you're the one. Is there any way to formalize the Islamic moral dilemma regarding Mo's conduct with Aisha? Is it the number one? It is the number one cause of Muslims doubting their faith. Project for 2026. The main project for 2026, well, it's going to be two. There's going to be the Satanic Verses, popularizing that. And don't worry, I'll do all the work for you. You guys just have to roll with it. and Muhammad in the Bible. Muhammad in the Bible is going to be a big project because these guys have gotten increasingly deceptive. Now they don't just go, oh, Deuteronomy 18:18. Now they go, but this commentary, and if you connect it to what this church father said and what this guy over here and what this scholar said, and they make it increasingly convoluted, but way more difficult to examine because now you're quoting a bunch of other things that people don't have easy access to. So some of us are going to do the difficult work of going through every insane, idiotic, nonsensical, cherry-picking misrepresentation that these guys go through, and we're going to expose it all so that they have nothing else they can say. As far as like character of Muhammad, conduct of Muhammad stuff, we've been doing that. Just need to keep amping it up, and more people have been catching on to that stuff. So it's good stuff. Leave the tribalism for sports loyalty, not polemics. Quit telling me what to do, sketch therapy. But yeah, as far as the cult mentality of everyone has to do it our way. No, we don't. Not to be a conspiracy guy, but it seems like those encouraging this idea be put forward might actually want us to lose. Interesting to think about. Yeah, again, you could always have trolls who are encouraging the division and so on, but there are, I mean, look at the response when Jay's speaking, even if it's complete nonsense. The crowd loves it. So there are a ton of real believers. So I'm assuming that the people we're hearing from are true no-mowers, true believers in the no-mow movement. Donating because D. Wood is just in it for the cash. That's true. I don't know why you're saying just kidding. If I'm in it for the cash, then what do you think I'm doing this entire show for? Think I'm here? You think I'm here because I really care about no blah blah? No. I know super chats will come in. Momo knew gangbang and not Bing Bang. Big Bang is the proof. Hang on, I got to screenshot that. I'm about to respond to Lily J. Maybe this week. If it's not this week, it'll be next week. But her argument that Muhammad is in that the Quran talks about the Big Bang. All you have to do is read the verse and have any clue what the Big Bang is to know how stupid that claim is. But if I can figure out a way to put I don't know. I don't know if I can insert this joke, and certainly not the way El Zut inserted things. But we'll see. I don't know if this joke would be too much for an otherwise nice video correcting a stupid argument. Drew says, I think Jay's no-mo method is too complex and makes us look dishonest. Yeah, especially when you're giving terrible arguments. Guys, I've said it a million times. There's plenty of room for skepticism about the Muslim sources. And you can dial up your skepticism and say, I don't trust any of this stuff. Along the same lines of what I was just saying about like Christian apologetics and compared to Dawah. When the Dawah guys make stuff up and then spread lies, and some of them know that it's, when Yasser Qadi was saying the Quran's been perfectly preserved from the time of Uthman to today, and there are no two manuscripts that differ in even one letter. He knew that was a lie when he was saying it. He knew it. So there's an example of someone who's like completely lying. He knows he's lying. How do I know? Because he'd written books beforehand. And he wrote the book on the science of the Quran before that. He knew there were variants. He knew that. And he lied because that's what Muslims wanted to hear. So you've got liars and you've got other people who they're not contributing to the lie. They're not deliberate. They're not lying. They're not saying it. But they're just letting everyone else lie. And they don't want to be the guy who exposes the lie. Well, what happens after that? You step back, and once it's exposed, you all seem like liars. Even the guys who weren't telling the lie were complicit because they're not correcting the lie. So we don't trust any of you guys. Right? Similar concern here. If you're spreading actual bad information, terrible arguments and so on, and it spreads and people don't correct it, then we all are going to look dishonest. Now, again, you can present the actual arguments. You can present actual arguments in favor of the claim that Muhammad didn't exist without making stuff up. But that's why I'm suspicious. That's why keep in mind, I haven't been following all the stuff. I haven't read all the latest books claiming that Muhammad didn't exist. I don't trust the position, and I trust the position that Muhammad didn't exist. I trust it less and less over time. Why? Because, as I pointed out, What would be most compelling to me is if you came up with a good alternative explanation. Here's a better explanation for why we have all this stuff. I wonder if we're supposed to believe that Muhammad didn't exist, what's the better explanation for all this stuff? And when they give arguments and we look into the arguments, it's a bunch of made up stuff. And so I think, okay, you can't put together a better explanation. And the more stuff you have to make up, the less I think that it's even possible that you're going to come up with a better explanation. Which means I'm thinking you're maybe never going to come up with the better explanations. Why should I take that seriously? So that's the situation now. Paul withstood Peter to his face, biblical period. Yeah, that's important to note for all the people who, hey, just deal with this stuff behind the scenes and so on. It depends on the situation. If Peter had sinned against Paul and done something mean to Paul, then what should Paul do? He should go to Peter and talk about that. No need to expose it. No need to expose it if it's at that level. What if Peter refuses to repent? Well, then, okay, go get a couple more people. Then you can eventually make it clear what Peter's done. But that sort of thing you would try to deal with behind the scenes. If someone spreads complete nonsense to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people, that is not a private matter between two people anymore. If you want to respond to that, you have to respond to it publicly because it needs to be corrected publicly. And what happened when Peter was spreading a bad example by breaking fellowship with Gentile believers, Paul corrected him in front of everyone. Paul called him out and rebuked him in front of everyone. Why? Because it had affected everyone. Everyone had seen it. So, yeah. UK is in a bad way, mass migration. Yeah, oh yeah. UK is in a really, really, really bad way. Yep. Here is the money that we agreed on. Thank you for your service, Agent D. Wood. We'll be in touch. Love you, D. Wood. Say hi to me. AP, men of Al-Zut took him. Yes, the Al-Zut managed to capture AP. Fortunately, they're just holding for ransom. They're not going to do anything messed up to him like they did to Muhammad. But thank you for the money. I will just give me my latest talking points that I'm supposed to defend. We need Al-Zut song from AP and Al-Zut merch ASAP. Yeah, trying to figure out. Hey, guys. Oh, I should make a separate video. Because people do come up with hilarious recommendations for various things. I should probably ask, hey, what would be a funny way to have Al-Zut? Have something about Al-Zut on a shirt that people can wear around. Because keep in mind, be a great conversation starter. You're standing in line at the grocery store and people are like, hey, what's up with that Al-Zut stuff, man? What's Al-Zut? What is that? Oh, glad you asked. I'll tell you all about the night of Al-Zut. Then people will be shocked. Muslim trannies with tattooed eyes are repenting. Yep. Because of finding out that Muhammad didn't exist. It's powerful stuff. I mean, with stuff like the Islamic Dilemma and others, you don't need to resort to stuff like Muhammad myth or stuff. It's more damaging to Islam if Muhammad actually did exist and behaved as history says he did. Yeah, and it's just easier. It's way easier to learn a detail like Muhammad and Aisha or something like that and go with that than have to make this convoluted case that Muhammad didn't exist. If you actually had a really good case that Muhammad didn't exist, I'd say, yeah, I'll go with that. But I haven't seen such a powerful case. Any update on hijab or Ali Dawah? Haven't been paying much attention to them. I think Muhammad Hijab has a fight coming up. When's that fight coming up? Is that this month? He's fighting some old politician. He's probably get beat by the old politician because hijab is slow. So anyone with some serious speed, and hijab has a glass jaw. I don't know if you guys we've talked about it before. There's some like old guy at some rally, some like 75-year-old dude, tags him in the jaw, and hijab looked like he was about to fall over. His knees buckled, and he had to be like steadied by people escorting him out of there. But yeah, so makes sense for him to fight an old politician guy. And AP got Al-Zutted again, just taken for ransom. As long as we pay the ransom, nothing will happen to him. So that's good. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. Trying to think if there's anything we didn't cover, but I think we covered everything. I mean, there's always more to cover as far as more arguments and stuff, but yeah, looks like sadly, looks like we are going to have to spend some time going through more arguments, presenting more problems. We've done this mainly in some long live streams, so we're going to have to get some shorter videos that are more shareable. And I'm happy to grant wherever there's a point, wherever there's a valid point that the nomos are using, happy to grant that is an important point. And they do have some important points. Some of the stuff is not good. Some of the stuff is not good arguments, and especially some of the stuff that Jay's been sharing for a while is just, it's either there are arguments that are just terrible and they're based on made up nonsense, or there are arguments where once you're informed of all the evidence, his evidence just isn't nearly as persuasive as he makes it sound. So Jay's the one who's been pushing this stuff, and Jay's the one who kind of got a cult following by portraying all of us as evil for rejecting his position, and then got his followers to go and just constantly harass us and so on. So it's kind of on him as far as the need to respond to it. But he wanted attention for this, wanted Christians to pay more attention to it. So fine, we will pay more attention to it. But I don't think it's going to go the way he thinks it's going to go. I think a lot of this stuff is about to be exposed. And if the result of the entire position was cult-like behavior and division and so on, it's good that it needs to be exposed. I just hope that Jay responds to correction as we all should be willing to, because guess what? We all screw up. We've all made bad arguments. We've all said bad things about other people that we shouldn't have, and so on at certain points. So that's just life. But Jay is one of the OGs. He's back in the day. He was he's one of the goats. He's one of the goats of this stuff, and he was the one holding it down at Speaker's Corner for decades. And he's one of the main reasons Christians are dominating at Speaker's Corner now. And so, you know, I think he's in his 70s now. He's super sharp for someone in his 70s. If I make it to my 70s, because almost all the guys in my family die right around 50, which is about what I'm at now. I can almost guarantee you if I survive to my 70s, I will not be nearly as quick and sharp as Jay still is. He is still razor sharp in his intellect and so on. So, I mean, for all I know, this is a guy who could go on for another 20, he might be 100 years old still arguing. Just hope that he doesn't go out spouting a bunch of nonsense and attacking Christians and causing division. Want what's best for him, want what's best for everyone out there. But yeah, Jay needs to be way more careful than he's being, and he needs to stop whenever someone disagrees with him, automatically going with the worst possible interpretation of that person's actions. Like, what is the worst possible explanation for why this person disagrees with me? Oh, this person is jealous of my popularity, and therefore that's why this person is attacking me. Couldn't it be that the person disagrees with you and thinks that you're spreading really bad information because they looked it up and found out it's really bad information? Couldn't that be the explanation, Jay? Couldn't that be? So why not assume the best about your fellow Christians and so on? Again, it would be easy to attribute all sorts of terrible motives to, you could say, because, you know, he really wants to cause division because he's being paid. He's being paid to stop the avalanche of apostasy, and he got paid. And he said, you know what, it would be easy to attribute things like that. Why would you want to do that? It's completely implausible. It's completely ridiculous to think that that's what Jay is doing. Why does Jay think that that's what everyone else is doing? It's pretty sick stuff. Needs to correct that. Two more. Is AP sailing with Greta Thunberg? Greta Thunberg dying to get another free sandwich. So trying that again. Chance of success, approximately 0%. Chance of her getting a sandwich at the end of it, I don't know, 80%. So we'll see what happens. And Elizabeth says, thank God for you, David. Blessings from Norway. Norway. I'm actually a quarter Norwegian. My grandma was Norwegian. She was actually the, I should make a video about her because she died a couple months ago, but she kind of didn't know what she was marrying into. She didn't know how dysfunctional basically my entire bloodline was. So she was a sweet lady who kind of got swept off her feet by the muscle-bound Green Beret stud who walked into town, who was my grandfather. And then she found out later what she had married into and stuff. But not a lot of families where everyone just seems to be just completely destroying themselves with drugs and alcohol and crime and so on. And everyone's just like, I mean, it would look like you're trying to destroy yourself if you were looking at what's gone on in my family and stuff like that. And there was one little nice Christian lady the entire time, constantly trying to hold people back from destroying themselves and so on. Anyway, so maybe there's hope for Norway because there's something definitely cool about my grandma. Anyway, all right, everyone, catch you all next time. I'm not sure what's coming up. I should have a video out sometime tomorrow. I want to make a response to Tucker Carlson, who's become a pretty big fan of Islam recently. So we're going to check out some of that. Anyway, catch y'all next time. God bless you.